Happy Hump Day, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Brought to you today and every day by our friends at Les Schwab Tires. Tires, wheels, accessories for anything that you drive. Stop by your local Les Schwab today, and the pros there are going to get the job done right the very first time. Going to talk a lot of draft today. You may not have heard the NFL draft starts tomorrow. First round action from Lambeau, from Green Bay, Wisconsin. And we'll have that right here on ESPN 792.1 FM. We'll also be talking a little NBA draft on the show today. Steve Wiseman covered he covered Cooper Flagg. He's from Durham down in North Carolina. He's covered Cooper Flagg a lot longer than most of us have been paying attention to him. And covered him a lot closer this year, obviously, than any of us did. So we'll talk with Steve Wiseman at noon to start off hour number 2, and then Devin Jackson to discuss the NFL draft as well. Shortly after our show ended yesterday, and weirdly, poetically, tragically, the trivia question I asked yesterday for some golf in our Festival of Tees powered by the Utah Golf Association. The trivia question I asked yesterday was, in terms of rush yards and receiving yards, who leads the Utes in returning production? And the answer was Zacharias Williams. Zach Williams was the only guy with who returned with 100-plus yards of receiving and rushing offense. Now, you got to give credit to Isaac Wilson because technically, he with all of his passing yards, like that maybe should count for you, but then the quarterback is always going to be the answer. In college football, the quarterback is responsible for all the yardage basically because he's either throwing the ball or, minus what you handed off to the running back, you're running the ball yourself, etc. So that's too low-hanging fruit. I was like, let's get clever with this answer, and you have to go pretty far down what you saw from the Utes last year in a paltry offensive season. You bring back effectively like 200 total yards of offensive production outside of the quarterback room. And the quarterback room, of course, I'm talking about the production of Isaac Wilson, whose rush yards are always diminished by the sacks that he took. Zach Williams was the answer to the trivia question, and then I don't even know how much longer later. An hour later, 90 minutes later, 2 hours later, not even. Guess who's in the transfer portal? The wide receiver that Kyle Whittingham made it a point to shout out after every practice or at every media availability, a guy who played in the spring game, and there are people out there, at least on social media, at Real OC Sports if you want to interact, 877-353-0700, if you want to tell me how you feel about it. There were a lot of people who are just like, yep, shouldn't have had him play in the spring game. Somebody saw that and decided I need that guy on my roster and called him and tampered. I don't think that it's quite as simple as that. I think that if you held Zach Williams out, if you didn't put Z in the game, he's still getting those phone calls. He's still getting attention from other teams because other teams recruited him. He's from a traditional high school powerhouse program in Southern California. It's not like he was this best-kept secret that only Utah was aware of coming into Salt Lake City. Other teams recruited him. And a lot of those teams probably had him on the radar as someone they wanted to call if their wide receiver room got a little thin, if they potentially needed help at a position that Utah definitely needs help at. So the projected wide receiver number 1, 6'2", 195 pounds, class of 2024 from Junipero Serra High School in Gardena, California. He is now in the transfer portal. And look, maybe this is just somebody shopping the options, and maybe this is an opportunity for Utah's collective to step up and to say, actually, we're going to double your money. We don't want you to leave. Maybe he ends up at USC. They were the like the second place team, I think, in Zach Williams' recruitment. They were another powerhouse program that offered him, and that's right in their backyard. He had offers from Arizona State. Maybe he wants to go play at Arizona State. In any case, Utah's got a wide receiver problem, and it's not that much bigger than it was yesterday, by the way. It's exactly 100 yards bigger than it was yesterday. I know that this doesn't feel good, and it doesn't sound good, and it doesn't look good for Utah football, but this is not the same thing as Keanu Tanuvasa transferring away from the program. This is not the same thing as if Brant Keithy at some point would have been like, you know what, I'm not doing this. If Mekhi Bernard, for that matter, who did put his name into the transfer portal and was coaxed and cajoled back out of it and brought back into the fold for Utah, that would have been a much, much bigger loss than this. I'm not trying to diminish the kid's talent. I'm not trying to be an apologist for the clear issues that you have in recruiting, retaining, developing wide receiver talent. I'm just letting you know that as ugly as it feels right now for Utah football to lose a guy whose name you actually know, it's not the end of the world. Does it suck? Sure. Is it going to severely diminish Jason Beck's ability to create offensive production in 2025? I honestly don't think so. I just don't. I'm not going to sit here and sell you a bill of goods that this is not a loss, because it is. Anytime you lose a talented player from your program who you wanted to retain, that's an L. And they wanted to retain this guy. Maybe they still do.
By all reports, he had a really good spring camp, too. Enough for Kyle Whittingham to say he would be the number one receiver if we were playing games today. He showed out in the scrimmage that they invited the media to see a couple weeks in. He showed out in the spring games. So, yes, it's a loss. But to your point, OC, it shouldn't be viewed as a too devastating of a loss, because they're starting basically from scratch anyway in the wide receiver room. That's the most
important part of this whole thing when you're looking at who's there for Utah football, who's not. I'm like most of you. When I saw what the running back room was going to go through and what the quarterback room was going to go through and what the wide receiver room was going to look like, how stripped down everything was going to be, my initial reaction to it was just like, ooh, that is uncomfortable. Now, there's one room that did not happen. Offensive line, okay? Utah's offensive line is the same as it was last year, effectively, with a couple of young guys joining the program. But the offensive line is in really good shape, as we've talked about multiple times. Everything else is going to be relatively novel, new, unrecognizable in a lot of cases. You're going to have to learn the names in a lot of these cases. And guess what? As painful as it is and as counterintuitive as it might seem to feel that like we should just be okay with the idea that we actually have no idea. There's so much uncertainty about whether or not Wayshawn Parker is actually going to be a thing. We don't know. That uncertainty is unsettling. And that's an okay way to feel right now. But when you lose a guy who the coach says, yeah, you know what, he probably would be our top wide receiver this year. If we started the season tomorrow, he would be wide receiver number one. You never want to lose that guy. You never want to lose a guy that impresses Kyle Whittingham. You just don't. However, this is a guy who has 100 yards of production in the offense. It's not the same thing as if Britton Covey 2 years in had been like, guys, I am in high demand as a completely undersized white kid. I'm headed somewhere else. I wish he would just come back. I hope that his agent is just shopping things around and saying, hey, this Zach Williams is the guy that you want, USC. I know we offered him before. Well, you want him for $500,000 a year. ooh, I don't know if we want him that bad. I hope that this is just a business equation, that this is just somebody being like, you know what, let's see what the offers are for you in the transfer portal, and let's not force any tampering to make that happen. I don't think that's what it is, though.
Yeah, I was gonna make a joke about
Because
Brenton
guess what?
Covey's BYU ties. His uncle talked to him too much about
Don't.
how great Cougars are. If that
Honestly,
that seems like that would be the most likely thing to have happened
By the way,
if NIL and transfer portal was a thing when Brenton was in his first couple years.
People know that, like, what a win that was for Utah. The Covey family house is on that little rise just to the north of Lavelle Edwards Stadium. The home he grew up in effectively looks at the stadium.
Yeah.
And he still was always a Utah guy. Okay, so celebrate your wins where you get them. It feels like a big-time L for Utah football that a guy who the coaching staff made a point to say we're impressed with him was not satisfied with whatever. And what could it be that Zach Williams wants Utah to give him that he's not getting? It could be more money, sure. It couldn't be, hey, I need more praise and more attention from my coaching staff.
Could have just been he heard that and went, hey, man, I may have leverage here, and he exercised the leverage that he and his agent exercised the leverage they felt like they had. It could just be as simple as that.
We have to see where he ends up. Because if he ends up at a Big Ten program or an SEC program, that's probably an NIL situation, okay? If he ends up at Oregon or if he ends up at USC, that's NIL plus familiarity with those coaching staffs who recruited him. If he ends up at, like, Fresno State, you're going to be like, oh, man, a relationship was fractured somewhere. If he ends up at BYU, Utah fans are going to lose their ever-loving minds. He's not going there.
Let's hope it doesn't end up being that way with all the consternation that happened yesterday with potential poaching from BYU, all the rumors about that. Yeah, that'd be worst case scenario. It feels like there's still a chance that maybe they heard the public praise that Witt was giving them, and they're like, oh, they're overplaying their hand. Let's see what we can get out of this. And maybe there's a miscalculation there, and he doesn't. Maybe they jumped in without much of an offer, thinking, hey, since we're getting this kind of praise, let's see what we can get. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know what that means about his chances to return. And that seems pretty unlikely in this day and age, OC, like you're about to say, but there's still that chance too.
There are people, as soon as I retweeted this information, On3 was the first report I saw. There were people out there who were just like, yep, shouldn't have had the spring football game.
Yeah, so many.
By the way, not having the spring football game or holding him out of the spring football game, because there were people making that point as well. Like, well, he was the only obvious starter who had to play in this thing. All the other guys that were on his level had to or were allowed to sit out. Relax. We don't know the level that he's really at right now. When your coach says, yeah, he'd be wide receiver number 1, I'm impressed with him. Okay. That's wonderful. You have to say that about somebody. That could be indicative of him being a great player who's going to be an all-conference performer this year, or it could be an indication that, man, Otto Tia keeps dropping the damn football. No offense, Otto. Sorry. We just saw you drop one. Just using you as an example.
Catching strays.
Yeah, Otto's just catching strays for no reason.
He's like, hey, man, I'm staying, okay?
By the way, Otto has more returning production in college football, and Creed Whittemore has more returning production in college football. So, look, I know there's nuance to all of this. I just cannot find a reason to get myself all up in arms about one guy announcing he's in the transfer portal. I will join the rest of you in my panic and my, I don't know. Panic's probably the wrong word. No, it's the right word. I will join the rest of you in panic if he ends up at BYU.
Yeah,
I might even jump on that bandwagon if he ends up at Arizona State, who recruited him in high school, because they're already pretty good.
And that'd be an indication of, hey, something feels off to me here. Let me go somewhere nearby that
But
that
what feels
better?
What is Utah supposed to do?
Yeah.
If they're not, I mean, I don't know what NIL money he's making. What is Utah supposed to do aside from make sure he has a competitive NIL situation, which they've done for everybody else that they've deemed to be must-have, right? Spencer Fano, I promise you his phone is blowing up as we speak with options to go, like, Alabama probably wants him. Oregon probably wants him. I mean, he's supposed to be a top 4, top 5 offensive lineman at any position, a top 2 or top 3 tackle in college football this year. That is what people think of him. Do we believe that everyone's just like, oh, well, he's a Utah guy. He's not going to go anywhere. That he's not getting 10x the amount of phone calls and text messages and DMs that somebody like Zach Williams is getting? So it's easy to be like, oh, Utah, you're screwing this up. They're not. Sometimes you just can't control the behavior of a young man who wants to see what's out there for him. And I can't even criticize.
Control the demand that these guys might.
I can't criticize a guy for having that feeling. I can't criticize a guy for wanting to know, if I put my name in the transfer portal, can I double my money? Is there a program out there who maybe hasn't heard about me yet, but their coaching staff is doing what every coaching staff is doing, and they're click, refresh, click, refresh, click, refresh. Who is available? Oh, this Zach Williams kid. What do we know about him? Oh, well, he's pretty good out of J. Sarah down in Southern California. Oh, yeah, great program. Okay. Wow, he's got good size. 6 foot plus, 200 pounds-ish. And what does Kyle Whittingham have to say about him? Now, that might be the only error here, if there is one. There are so many coaches in college football right now who are living in an elevated state of fear and paranoia that when somebody performs and somebody looks good, they're not going to tell us. And I applauded Kyle Whittingham this spring for having the stance that he has. Just be like, look, man, if I want to live in fear for the rest of my coaching career, which I think is one more year, so he's certainly, that old dog ain't going to learn a new trick for the sake of the next, what are we, 4? We're 6 months away, 7 months away from potentially the end of this whole thing. Is Kyle Whittingham going to be like, all right, I'm not saying a word about who looked good. I don't want the player to hear me say that to the media. I don't want the player to know that publicly I'm impressed with him. Like, this is just the world college football is in right now. That maybe somebody said, hey, put your name in the transfer portal, and maybe his dad said it, and maybe his agent said it, and maybe his grandma said it, and maybe his neighbor said it. We have no idea, at least not yet. Why are you in the transfer portal? Well, it's not because Utah didn't bring in a quarterback that was going to elevate your situation from last year. I could see why, if you're part of this program, if you're not someone who newly transferred in, you're looking at things and just being like, man, I just don't know. Because this quarterback room, Isaac Wilson, I love him as a friend, but I don't know if he's my guy that's going to elevate my career and is going to have, give me 1,000-yard seasons. Well, Utah didn't leave it to that. They went and they brought one of the best available quarterbacks out of the transfer portal. For a lot of people, it was John Mateer, the Washington State guy, right, who ended up at Oklahoma. Newsflash, you're not beating Oklahoma for NIL things. And there were 3 or 4 names for everybody, and Devin Dampier was kind of the 3rd or 4th name for everybody. And Utah got him to come here because of the connection with his offensive coordinator, because of the connection with the coaching staff that was in place, because of the succession plan that they have in place and they explained to Devin. So if you're a wide receiver or a tight end or a running back or an offensive lineman, all of whom have opportunities and are getting phone calls from everybody else in college football, you have to look at a few things. How's my relationship with this coaching staff? Good enough. And good enough is the only answer you're ever going to get now in college football. It's very rare that people have this, like, father-son relationship, big brother, little brother relationship, because it is a business now, right? It's good enough is as good as it needs to be. All right, great. I'm not blaming this on Micah Simon at all. He's a young guy. He can relate to these players on a level that a 50-year-old wide receiver coach presumably could not. I'm not going to put any evil on Micah Simon, the new wide receivers coach for the University of Utah. All right. So let's say I get along fine with my teammates and with the coaches. Good enough. Because good enough is, what about my NIL money? I don't know how much he's making from the University of Utah, but I do know this. The Utes, when presented with the challenge of retaining talent at already thin positions or at positions or with players that they deem to be important, they have stepped up to the plate. In every case, save, I guess, the most obvious one being the Tanuvasa situation, but there are more layers to that onion, okay? And at some point, you have to have a limit. Now, if Zach Williams is going to get $1 million from some other program to go be a wide receiver there, listen carefully to me. That is not a number you want the University of Utah to be paying. That's not a number you want Utah football to be throwing at a wide receiver who has 10 collegiate catches. I know that's uncomfortable. I know that's not the thing that people want to hear. I know that the answer in everyone's head is just pay what you got to pay to keep them. No, that's the wrong answer. The right answer is pay these people what you and your coaching staff actually think they are worth. Utah is very willing to do that and has displayed that as recently, if the rumors are true, as recently, if the information I'm getting is correct, as recently as potentially yesterday. They were like, you know what? This guy's good. We need him. We got to step up the compensation. If that's what ends up being the conclusion for Kyle Whittingham and Jason Beck and Micah Simon and Morgan Scalley and everyone else involved in this program, Bobby Blecken, your GM, if they all come to some consensus like, guys, that is such a bad look for us to have a wide receiver out shopping himself. We're thin at wide receiver. He's the best one we got, or at least we think he's the best one we got. Our other efforts in the transfer portal so far have been okay at best, at that position at least. Let's do what we have to do to keep him. If that's the conclusion that Utah football comes to, then we're going to get an announcement that Zach Williams is back in the fold. That's what happened with Mekhi Bernard. That's what has happened with Dallas Vakalahi, according to multiple reports. That's what's happening. Literally every single minute of every single day with Spencer Fano. Like, you know how in Kenya and South Africa and Botswana, I don't think there's rhinos in Botswana, but they have
I was just going to say, are you sure there's rhinos in Botswana?
They have those situations where there's an endangered rhino species. There's an endangered rhino, and that rhino is just assigned like 2 armed guards, people who work for the Forest Service, people who work for the Wildlife Authority, that just follow the rhino everywhere it goes. They got AK-47s, and they just camp out in the bush, and they're just protecting those rhinos from poachers. You've seen these things, right? You've seen the videos. You've seen the pictures. That's probably what you have to do right now if you're Utah with Spencer Fano.
You remember one of the wildest, if we look at the NBA, one of the wildest free agent stories that was similar to this was when DeAndre Jordan, for like a day, had agreed to sign with the Dallas Mavericks. This is now close to 10 years ago. And the Clippers sent J.J. Redick, who lived in Texas. DeAndre Jordan lived in Texas. They sent J.J. Redick. They sent Doc Rivers. They sent a bunch of people to his home
to sit with him
in Texas, to sit with him, to convince him, hey, no, we're going to run it back. We still have a chance to win a championship here. We can't do it without you. They sat with him. They convinced him. Then they sat with him until the free agent moratorium is over. They have a week. NBA has a week. And until he signed, he put ink on the paper, they did not leave his side.
It's the anti-poaching filibuster,
yes.
All right? And that's probably what you're having to do with the guys that you really, 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 really want and need, right? I mean, there are certainly individuals on this Utah football team that are as close to untouchable as it gets in college football right now, right? There are guys like Jaron Kump, who's died in the wool Ute. He's been here forever. He's a highly valuable player, and not just for Utah, but would be for another program.
Obviously, Spencer Fano is one of those guys.
But a guy like Kump is probably like, dude, this is it for me. This is the last ride, and I've been here, and I'm going to finish what I like. We're going to be done after this. I really think that Lander Barton, as talented as he is, I don't think that other teams are going to have any level of success making overtures for Lander Barton. His family is Utah royalty, right? He would have to answer to his mom, his dad, his brothers, his sister, if he was just like, guys, I'm jumping into the transfer portal. UCLA gave me a really nice offer, right? So there are people out there, there are people on the Hill that you're probably like, okay, we don't need to assign an anti-poaching guard like they're the Northern White Rhino. But there are people who are in that boat. And I don't know how it's being handled. I have that picture in my mind now, that there's just somebody sitting in a folding chair outside of Spencer Fano's dorm room, and he's got like a wire in his ear. He's got like one of those little earpieces, Secret Service style, and every once in a while, like, there's a phone call coming in for Spencer from a 208 number. Phone call from a 208 number. Oh, that's Idaho. We don't have to worry about that. That's Boise State. It's like, this is a 702 number. No, that's Vegas. We don't have to care about that. I don't know what the L.A. area codes are, but let's just say one's coming in. We got an L.A. area code coming in, and that guy just pounds on the door. Don't answer it. Don't answer it. Spencer, don't answer it.
Coach actually needs to talk to you. I got him on the phone right now.
Coach Whittingham says he needs to talk to you right this second. It's very important.
No, use my phone.
I don't know how it's being handled, but I imagine that you're able to build that fence and assign your guards and do it whatever is legal and whatever is possible. And again, you're playing with big boy money for these individuals that you've decided, I need him. I want him to be part of the team this year. We're not going to let that guy go. Let's not panic just yet. Maybe Zach Williams ends up leaving, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Maybe it's a Jaquindon Jackson situation.
Let's just hope. Let's just all seriously pray that it's not to BYU, because then that would be mass panic if he ends up after all that we heard yesterday.
I'm not hearing anything that he's going to end up at BYU. I don't think it's a strong possibility here. Nothing's outside of the realm of possibility in the transfer portal. I think it's just as likely he's back at Utah as he's at BYU. I think that the ones you have to worry about here are USC, Arizona State, Oregon. We'll see. At the end of the day, you can't get overly up in arms about any individual player that is as unproven as Zach Williams is. I know we heard all the good things, and I know we saw some nice things in the scrimmages in the spring game. But if you let yourself get stressed out over every player with 100 yards under his belt in college football jumping into the transfer portal, you're going to have a bad time trying to watch this sport and cover this sport. I'm not saying that to diminish the kid's talent. I'm not saying that to tell you that it's not a loss. I started this whole conversation saying that this is not a good look for Utah football.
No one's saying
this is potentially a loss.
No one's saying you shouldn't be passionate about the moves that your favorite team makes either. Just try to keep your composure through these transfer windows, because it's you're right. You're not going to last if you're going to get too up in arms about every guy's, every 18, 19, 20-year-old's decision.
Some good text messages coming in here about this. We'll take a break because I want to stay on clock a little bit. We'll take a break. We'll come back with some of your reaction. 877-353-0700. Just tell me how you're feeling. We know that this is not just one player heading into the transfer portal. This is your projected wide receiver number one at a place that has a hard time with wide receiver number ones. So I'm willing to give it those legs. I'm not willing to let this become the house is on fire kind of a discussion, because that's very, very far from being true. 877-353-0700 on the text line. You can call us as well. You can tweet at me at RealOC Sports. Some great reactions coming in, so I want to do those justice when we come back. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Gobert. They're hunting him. Doncic will dance, lean, fire, and hit.
Not right. And gave him the Larry Bird fake.
At some point today, we'll get to some NBA playoffs. Luka with the fake out on Rudy Gobert. 30-point night for Luka Doncic. 94-85 Game 2 win for the Lakers over the Timberwolves. That series is 1-1. That sound courtesy of TNT Sports. Kevin Harlan, Reggie Miller on the call. We're your home of the NBA playoffs here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Next game we'll have on the station is Game 3, Warriors-Rockets, Saturday night. And don't forget, we've got draft coverage for you right here as well. Okay, imagine that you're laying on a couch, all right, you're speaking to your Utah football therapist, and I'm trying to walk you back from the ledge because the knee-jerk reaction to Zacharias, to Zach Williams jumping into the transfer portal unexpectedly is that the sky is falling, the house is on fire, oh my gosh, what's happening here? Once again, we can't recruit, retain, develop wide receiver talent. And I just want to zoom out and have a little bit of perspective here. You have guys with more production in the fold still. Creed Whittemore's still here. Otto Tia's still here. I know I heard Coach Witt and the rest of the coaching staff and other players say the same thing, that Zach Williams was going to be your guy. Maybe he still will be, all right? Maybe this coaching staff, and I want to emphasize this again. I spent 5 minutes on it in the opening segment. Maybe I need to emphasize it again. If this coaching staff decides that this is a must-retain player, that this is a guy you cannot lose, the collective, I believe, will respond. The coaching staff will respond in kind, and you will have a situation like you do with Spencer Fano, Logan Fano, Smith Snowden, et cetera, where you're going to get a tweet, a Utah man am I, something like that. And hopefully it's not a Keanu Tanuvasa deal where 2 days after that he's like, just kidding, I'm going to BYU. I don't think that's going to be the case.
He said he meant state of Utah, man, apparently.
Yeah, a state of Utah. The little asterisk, a state of Utah. When I put the information out there, when I retweeted the initial news, there was a lot of reaction, and good reaction on Twitter, thought-provoking, at Real OC Sports, if you want to add yourself to the conversation now. 877-353-0700 if you want to say something on our text line.
Yeah, we'll take calls, too, if you want.
Yeah, you can call us.
Literally put your voice to things. Call us at that number, too.
But the rule is if you're calling us, you have to be laying on a kind of uncomfortable couch speaking to me like I'm your therapist.
If you're at work, go to your break room where they might have an uncomfortable couch and lay down and tell everyone it isn't weird. I'm talking to my Utah football therapist. Okay.
Okay, this is a point that has come in on the text line and came in yesterday on Twitter as well. Why would every player not test free agency every single year in the market by going in the transfer portal? Why would every player not do this? And the only actual answer for that is, well, because you're happy with what you got. Comparison is the thief of joy. And if you, every single minute of your life, every single opportunity you have, are looking over the fence and just being like, well, what about that? What about that house? Could I drive that car? Could I have that job? Could that be my wife instead? That is not a good life. It just isn't.
Especially that last one. But that's the reality of what we're talking about here, right? Like, if you're a college football player who loves the coaches you're playing for, who loves the program you're in right now, who loves your NIL deal, yes, it's possible that you probably could go, especially if you're one of these potential all-conference and all-American individuals. You think Ohio State couldn't drum up some money for you? Or Alabama couldn't drum up some money for you? I promise you they could. You think you couldn't call the GM at Oregon and just be like, man, I'm supposed to be an All-American this year. I'm playing right tackle at the University of Utah. Do you guys have room for me on the roster? They would be like, yeah, we do. We also have $2.5 million for you. How much you making at Utah? Not that much. Okay, we'll come to Eugene. I don't really want to, though. I'm happy here. My brother plays on this team. My friends are here in the community. I love this place. Okay, well, it's not, the bottom line is not as good. So that's why you wouldn't go into free agency every single year if you're a college football player or a college basketball player. Because you're happy. Well, just like in those of us in regular walks of life, we're not looking for a new job every year.
Why aren't you applying for a new job every day? Why not? Look, Indeed.com. Right now, James, I could find a lot of different jobs that have similar compensation, maybe better compensation packages that because I hold an advanced degree, I might qualify for on paper. Why am I not applying for those right now? Well, because you're happy, because you're satisfied.
Stability matters, right?
That is the reason. And I know it's such a thing that we're like, well, why wouldn't you do this? Because you're okay where you're at. Why wouldn't Lauri Markkanen be like, no, I'm not re-signing with the Utah Jazz? I know this. I've spoken to him. He loves it here. His family loves it here. All right? That's why. Could he go get more money somewhere else? Probably. Although it would be harder. But in any case, maybe not the best comparison I've ever made.
Yeah, maybe Lauri Markkanen wouldn't get more money somewhere else, but he would certainly be in a better winning situation somewhere else.
So you ask a valid question, and you're right. Why would you not? Well, that's the answer why you would not. Because you're happy and you're satisfied, and it means something to you to be where you're at. If we're doing this in college sports, and I know that there's a simultaneous effort to stop it from happening and to also be like, well, but logically you have to do this. Let's remember, every coach and every player could test the market every minute of every day because there's no real tampering rules. There's no real enforcement. There's nobody actually checking your phone records and being like, oh, weird. Nick Saban, you're no longer the head coach at Alabama. Why are you calling all of these people and telling them to go play for Alabama? Well, because I'm not the coach, so there's no real violation here. I'm just an old guy who's talking to kids about hypothetically how much money they could get for Alabama. Like, no one's actually doing those investigations, so everyone could be testing all of this all the time. Now, moving on from that feedback, and I think it is good feedback, and I appreciate it from Scroll In Key on the Twitter and on the text line. I'm not going to scroll down to find out what the number is, but 877-353-3869.
There was another one that, real quick, that's stuck out to me. Time to give Singer the bag. Well, you're going to have to give the NCAA the bag to let Singer play. Is the thing. Like, that's why Dorian Singer is not an option right now.
Did he say the Singer bag or give Singer? Time to
give the Singer bag.
Give the Singer bag.
Oh, so maybe that's like, hey,
means like
maybe that's what he means. That money. My bad.
That's how you got.
I
Dorian
probably misread
Singer.
that.
Yeah,
I probably misread that. But
maybe that's the conclusion.
Yeah,
like Dorian Singer can't come back. Okay, no eligibility, not happening. This is not give Dorian Singer a bag to come back for Utah. That's not an option. It is. You got Dorian Singer to come to Utah because you needed a wide receiver number one, and he was the best one available, the one that matched
kind
up.
Of money, yeah.
And you say, okay, I don't know what Dorian got. I don't know. I have no idea how much money that was.
Presumably a good amount, though, because he was a highly thought of, highly productive receiver
and
before.
By the way, that's a guy who had a 1,000-yard season under his belt, not 100-yard season under his belt.
10 times more.
Had a 1,000-yard season under his belt.
Add a zero to
so
that.
There might be a little apples to oranges. And again, I'm not trying to diminish Zach Williams, but we do have to be realists about this. If the coaching staff is sending itself into a tizzy and freaking out every time someone comes in and just like, hey, I think I might put my name in the transfer portal. What? You had 4 tackles for us last year. Like, okay. I mean, again, you just have to know what you're looking at. The other piece of feedback, or one of the other pieces of feedback that I wanted to address here, I said the house isn't on fire. The house isn't on fire if you want to win 7 or 8 games. Our best receiver on the roster right now is Nate Johnson. Let's not fool ourselves. This team currently is not built to win a Big 12 championship. You might be right. Who knows more about building a roster for a conference championship than I do, and we do, and you do? Who knows more about that? this staff. There has to be some level of trust in the Utah coaching staff. And please do not bring the last 2 years to me, because those 2 years would have been very different if not for the injury bug. If you think that that is something that is within the control of this Utah football coaching staff, then we can have a discussion. I don't think it is. I think it's bad luck. I think that those guys got hurt in unfortunate situations, and there's not a lot that anyone ever could have done about it. I mean, the Cam Rising finger in the table situation, maybe somebody sold their soul and unfortunately sacrificed Cam Rising's finger to the sports gods over it. I have no idea. But I promise you, 2 years ago and last year would have been different seasons had the injury bug not plagued the University of Utah. If we're not on the same page in that discussion point, I don't even know if we can continue this conversation on the show. We might just have to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
There has to be some level of trust in this coaching staff. And it's okay if you want to say, I don't know if I trust this offense because they're brand new. I will say this. With far inferior talent across the board last year, yes, in a lesser conference, Jason Beck had the second leading rushing offense in the country last year.
Fourth total offense in the country, right? It's by yardage.
I think that's right.
Top 5 total offense with far less talent, but also maybe in the Big 12. If New Mexico was in the Big 12, maybe that would have been closer to 10th best total offense because you're playing against better competition.
484 yards per game. You're right. Fourth best
in yards per game. Okay.
Yeah, fourth best. Let's see in yards per play where they were at. Fourth best in yards per play. Fourth best in yards per game.
And the passing yardage was not as good as the rush yardage, so it was certainly skewed towards the run, but still.
And maybe that's why Zach Williams is like, I'm going to the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Because they hired a guy who's going to run an offense that is ground and pound first. And I want to be in an air raid. And if that's the case, by the way, then nothing you can do can stop this.
Yeah.
No amount of momentum, no amount of NIL money. Well, there's always a price, but no realistic amount of NIL money is going to stop this. The idea, like I am firmly standing here. Well, I'm sitting here at our Broadway studios right now telling you the house is not on fire.
Yeah, you can't,
with Utah football.
When we're on camera, you can't say you're firmly standing.
Yes.
When you're actually sitting.
I'm
okay?
firmly seated.
Check us out on YouTube, by the way. Shameless plug.
I'm sitting here. I'm telling you that the house is not on fire because the projected, the praised, the complimented, hey, this could be our wide receiver number 1 because he jumped into the transfer portal. It's not the end of the world. Your reaction as a Utah fan with those raw wounds from the last 2 years is that, yeah, it is. This is a disaster. Maybe. Let's see what talent comes in out of the transfer portal. Let's see if he himself pulls himself back out of the transfer portal. Let's see if Utah football can convince him to stay. And let's see what this offense actually looks like. Let's not lie to ourselves. This offense is not equipped to win to compete for a conference championship. The information you have that is giving you that sense is what? You've got an offensive coordinator and a quarterback who were the backbone of a top 10 offense in every meaningful category last year, of a top 10 offense in the country. And they're playing now behind a better offensive line, much better offensive line. Your offensive line is better this year than it was when you won back-to-back Pac-12 championships. Do people know that? Do we realize that? That the offensive line heading into 2025,
I'm not sure people really do grasp that,
is better on paper. And by the way, do we need to go into what the wide receiving room looked like in those championship years? Do we want to have a conversation about the wide receiver room? You will not find anyone who's a bigger Britton Covey fan than me. Britton Covey was your best receiver is if you on paper
But
look at it and say Britton Covey is the guy, he's a number one. He was not a 1,000-yard receiver. He was not a deep threat. If you told people
he wasn't
around
even
the Pac-12 conference,
he was in the possession game was where he thrived, but he wasn't like a standout possession receiver either.
if you told
compared to
people
other programs
going into both of those years, you walked up to USC. Let me talk to your D coordinator. Hey, you've got to find a way to beat Utah this year. Their best receiver is Britton Covey. The best wide receiver is Britton Covey. They'd be like, okay, I like that kid. Good player. Do you have anyone better than him? We have literally 4 wide receivers who would be number one on that Utah squad right now. You think you can beat us? Yeah, we think we can beat you. You can't! Utah football does not win because of their wide receivers, and that's never going to be the case when Kyle Whittingham is the head coach. And maybe that's why Zach Williams is in the transfer portal, but it's also something that we as a fan base have to come to grips with, have to embrace, all right? That the wide receiver room, while it's constantly trying to improve, is not the engine that drives this train. This is not where you win or lose games if you're Utah football. This is not where you win or lose conference championships if you're Utah football. And certainly not in the transfer portal discussion. We got to wait and see how this all shakes out. I will happily come on the airwaves when Utah has no tight end, no running back that's active in the passing game, no quarterback who can throw the ball downfield, no real meaningful throw game. I will happily, if that's how it plays out this year, say, hey, you were right. Zach Williams was the answer to all of this. But it's just not the case. I wish the young man well. I wish he will come back to the University of Utah. But I just want people to lay down on the therapist couch and realize this is not the end of the world for Utah football. A single loss, a single personnel loss, or call it the third one of this offseason cycle if you want to, does not mean that you're screwed. Because if you tune into Arizona State radio right now, there's at least one guy that they're worried about being gone. If you tune into Texas Tech radio right now, there's at least one guy that they're worried about being gone. Now, they've killed it in the transfer portal and bringing talent in. But nobody is sitting there in college football right now going like, yeah, we have everything we need and everything we want, and we could not improve this roster at all. All right. I'm way over time, as is often the case. Another Iamaleava brother has made a headline this week, and it's a little bit of a different situation than Nico, but Madden also heading to UCLA. The real headline here, though, is what his former school plans to do about it. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show. Time for a very quick little hot lunch before we get to Steve Wiseman talking some Cooper Flag. ESPN 792.1 FM. We've got our Festival of Tees powered by the Utah Golf Association. It's going on right now. Free rounds of golf to the best courses in the state and beyond every single day, multiple times a day, on the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, on the Sean O'Connell Show, on the Drive with Spence Checketts. Today we have 18 holes to Davis Park. Is that updated? We have 18 holes. We have a round of golf somewhere. All right. So Nico Iamaleava made a bunch of headlines with his demand for more NIL money, and he ends up, I think, either evening out or maybe even losing money, transferring away from Tennessee. He's headed to UCLA. His younger brother, who was at Arkansas, is also going to join him. Madden is the younger brother, and he said, you know what, I'm out. Now, the rumor out there is that Madden was on the receiving end of about $500,000 worth of NIL from Arkansas and never played, hasn't played it down. Now, there are some safeguards put into place in some of these NIL contract situations where you can seek a buyout effectively. That the NIL contribution, the collective, can say, hey, if you don't play and if it doesn't work out, then you got to pay this money back. And their athletic department, their athletic director, the head of their collective and fundraising has said, we intend to enforce this. There's a lot of schools that have had it. And Arkansas is becoming, I think, the first publicly to say, you know what, we're actually going to get this money back. Or we're going to go to court and we're going to engage in a legal battle in the effort of getting this money back. Whether or not they actually do, I'm skeptical. But the collective is saying, dude, you came here, you sat and did, like, you practiced, and now you're out, and you cashed in on whatever, $500,000, whatever the real number is. That's a significant amount of money, and Arkansas is a place that has some big-time boosters, but I don't think we should really get into the world where $500,000 for what at the end of the day is a kind of half commitment is something you just throw away. Because if you do it with one player, just because he's got a big name, then how many other players are also going to come and dip their hand in the cookie jar and take $100,000, $200,000, $500,000, $1 million? And suddenly your collective and the donors to that collective are just like, dude, $4 million was spent on people who never played it down at Arkansas, never played it down at BYU, never played it down at Utah. The return on investment conversation has not yet really happened in earnest when it comes to the NIL and the collectives, and it's going to at some point. And Arkansas, I think, is ready to start that conversation.
Yeah,
we invested in you, and you did not even bother to try to make a return or give us a return on that investment, so we want the money back.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that there's plenty of people out there that probably think this is a good way to drive recruits away from your school, if you're going to say this. We saw the story in the Salt Lake Tribune. Kevin Reynolds wrote about a somewhat similar situation that happened with BYU where the Royal Blue Collective allegedly took some of the money back, didn't take some of the money back, but they cut some of the players' NIL money before last season for similar reasons. You didn't give us the production we paid for. So, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think there needs to be a balance of power. Right now, all the power when it comes to transfer portal, recruiting, getting money from NIL collectives is in the players. So schools unofficially through NIL collectives saying we're going to take back some of that power, I think is a good thing for the sport.
Here's what needs to be clear, I think, with something like this. If you're paying an 18-year-old kid for guaranteed production at the college level before he actually produces for you, you're an idiot.
Yeah, that's a you problem.
That's
a you problem. Yeah.
Right? If you're like, I mean, the NFL does this every year. We're going to watch the NFL draft tomorrow, and 32 first-round picks, there's going to be like 10 of them who are a waste of money for that team, right? Someone's going to get fired over that. That's how it needs to be in college football too. If you're the coach and the GM, the collective driver who spends money on players who actually don't want to be there, there should be some consequences for you. But also, we just need to make it more clear. What I'm paying you for as a freshman coming in, someone who has not established himself, has not proven themselves at the college level, everyone else wants you. I know I have to pay you this money. What I'm paying you for is not production. I'm paying you for loyalty. I'm paying you for commitment. I used to give you a scholarship for that. Now I'm giving you a scholarship and $100,000, scholarship and $500,000, scholarship and $1 million. But what I'm paying you for is loyalty. You have to be here. You have to play for this team. Whether you're good or not, that's not up to me. I think you're going to be. I trust my evaluation process. I trust the coaching staff's evaluation process. That's what the language needs to look like in these things. If you leave because you just feel like it, not because we cut you, not because of like a real family emergency, if you leave just because you're leaving, then you got to give us that money back, kid. We paid you for loyalty. These are pro sports. If you sign a contract, James, if I sign a contract with Broadway Media and halfway through I'm just like, guys, I'm actually not going to fulfill this contract. I'm not going to do it. You think that the company's just going to be like, okay, see ya.
Yeah, we see it all the time in the NBA after the trade deadline. They give it a name for it. They call it a buyout market, right? Because there's veteran players who are no longer producing to the number that the number of money that they're getting. They're no longer producing at that level. And teams and the players are like, okay, let's negotiate something that makes you a free agent here. You give us some of the money back. We give you a little bit more upfront here than you would have gotten this season. Now you're a free agent.
You could put damn near anything in a contract and make it legally binding with the right attorneys overlooking it and it being notarized and things like that. Just put the language in there that belongs in there. If you're Arkansas and you're losing 34 players in the transfer portal, great point that someone brought up on the text line, you have to put your foot down at some point. Okay, you 33 who we gave like $10,000 to, fine, see you later. But you, sir, we gave $500,000. If you're going to be disloyal, I want the money back because what I was buying was your loyalty. That money was to secure your commitment, your actual commitment, a meaningful commitment, not just commitment on paper. I put a poll question out at Real OC Sports. It's how you respond every single day on our poll questions on Twitter. Whether you would support your favorite team, in this case, Utah is the example. Should Utah do this? If you offered a kid and part of that offer was a big chunk of NIL money and that kid never plays for you and he decides to go somewhere else, do you support the team going back, trying to get that money? Give me the buyout. Half of it, 3/4 of it, 10% of it, whatever that is in the contract. Hey, you did not play. We said you had to play. You didn't do it. We said you had to get this good of grades. Whatever's in there. You didn't do that. Give me the money back. It does set a scary, scary precedent with recruits because if you are known as the stickler on the contract, maybe people don't want to sign one with you. But Arkansas is stepping out like Tennessee did by saying, no, you're not going to hold our feet to the fire, Nico. Arkansas is now doing this with the younger brother and just being like, dude, no, give us that money back. I bet the Iamaleava family right now is feeling very put upon by the college football system. It's like, what the hell? Why is everyone coming after us? Why are we the two players that everyone's deciding to put their foot down? Must be something about it. All right, we got to take a break. We're going to come back, switch gears, talk a little basketball, specifically the upcoming NBA draft and the NBA draft lottery. Steve Wiseman has covered Cooper Flagg. He's a Duke men's basketball writer. He's a co-host on the Believe Network. Get his thoughts on what a lot of people think is the game changer in this year's draft. And, of course, the Jazz are in a position where maybe, just maybe, they can get him. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome into the show for the very first time, Steve Wiseman, joining us from the other side of the country, Duke men's basketball beat writer, Believe Network co-host, insider on Duke basketball. And obviously we have a vested interest, or we hope we have a vested interest in all things Blue Devils, or at least one thing Blue Devils, because the Jazz have secured top lottery odds in the upcoming NBA draft lottery. The countdown is on for that one. Steve Wiseman joins us to talk about hoop, but especially about Cooper Flag. Steve Wiseman, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you. Cooper's a hot topic always, and now it's draft season, so now it's NBA talk for Cooper.
And he made it official that he was heading into the NBA draft. Most of us thought this was a foregone conclusion, but he went about his due diligence, it seems, and he talked with the people he needed to talk to. What do we know about that process? Was there ever any serious consideration that maybe another year of college basketball would be the right thing for him?
No, not really. He was just taking his time, and there's no need to rush it. And, it was clear from the time that he reclassified 2 summers ago into this class, the idea of that was to get to the NBA faster. So, of course, with NIL now, there's monetary compensation that athletes can get, so it does make it not as much cut and dried as it used to be. I remember 5-6 years ago when Zion Williamson was coming out, he had the same concerns. He was like, I love being at Duke. I love playing college basketball in this program, in this environment. He loved being a student. But there was no doubt he had to go to the NBA because of the money. Well, for Cooper, there was money to be made here at Duke that was substantial, but it wasn't to the level of what he'll make in the NBA. And he has a shoe contract already with New Balance. While he played at Duke, he had to wear Nike gear during games. New Balance is ready for him to wear New Balance gear on national television. Okay, so he kind of had to get to the NBA to do that.
That's a wild thing to think about. I mean, you've been around him. You've covered him more closely than anyone here in Salt Lake City has, certainly. And what I can observe from afar is that he seems to have handled the whole process, the reclassification, first of all, the pressure of being the man who's supposed to be the man at a place like Duke, which of course is a basketball blue blood, and now this process. It seems like he's handling it with like a lot of maturity, a lot of aplomb. Am I missing anything, or is he kind of like, even behind the scenes, as good as it seems to look?
Yeah, it seems to be that way. And of course, I was around the team. I go to every game, home and road, so I'm around him all the time. And he's a genuine article. It looks like. I mean, there's no selfishness. He always wants to have his teammates involved. He always, he didn't want to, even though he knew he was a big spotlight, the National Player of the Year. I mean, all that, but he wanted to defer to his teammates as much as possible, get them attention. Con Knippel was his roommate, and he's going to be a lottery pick too. And so, even when he got hurt and missed the ACC tournament, when Cooper had that sprained ankle that scared everybody to death, turned out to be nothing. But he missed those 2 games in the tournament, and he was on the bench. And he was just thrilled that the team played so well without him. They were able to win the ACC championship without him, and they were able to show their skills. So, this is a kid that was 17 when he got to school last summer, turned 18 in December, and just acted like a guy beyond his years. He just seemed to have everything under control and made all the right decisions that you want to make.
Now, this is a kind of a tangent, but when you say Con Knippel's his roommate, is that on the road for road games, like the hotel situation for the school, or like they actually live together in what I assume is no longer a college dorm room, because these guys are making more money than any of us are, like some palatial estate where Con lives in the West Wing and Cooper lives in the East Wing of the house?
No, he was a roommate like during the year, like not on the road. They had different roommates, that kind of thing, traveling. But this was his roommate on campus. He was on campus. So in the freshman situation, they did the whole we are college freshmen at Duke, and this is where we live kind of thing.
Okay.
No, they didn't have a palatial estate off campus. They were on campus where they were supposed to, like college students, like what they were. So he wanted that experience and wanted to enjoy it. And so he and Con got along famously.
That is remarkable to me. I mean, these young kids are probably better human beings than I was, but like, if you're telling me, hey, you're making $5 million ish, And who knows how much after that. In the near future, you're going to be making, 40 and 50 million a year. You're going to live in this dorm room on campus. I think my egotistical 18-year-old self would have been like, nope, that's not happening. But these guys embraced it, huh?
They did, and I think back to my freshman year of college. I was probably a little different attitude than those guys had. I'm confident that was the case. Not in the best of ways either, right? So I would have been thinking about myself a little more than they were. So that's why they're ready to make this step, I guess.
Steve Wiseman is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Talking Cooper Flagg, he covers covers Duke men's basketball, and we are hoping that former Duke player Cooper Flagg will end up in a Utah Jazz uniform. Now there is the question of like, hey, how would he fit in a place like Salt Lake City? I don't know how much time you spent in Salt Lake. I don't know how much you know about the Utah Jazz organization, but at least on paper, do you think that's a marriage that if it comes to pass, if Utah wins the draft lottery, is something that could make sense for Cooper Flagg in a place where he could be happy and maybe stay as a long-term player?
Yeah, he's from Maine originally, right? So he's not from a huge market, okay? Now, I'm talking about like New York, Boston, L.A., those kind of markets, Chicago, which Salt Lake is not those things, right? Salt Lake is not Maine, right? But it's a smaller market among, NBA markets. So he seems to be comfortable in that setting, growing up in Maine and small town and then, being at Duke and everything. So that seems to fit his personality. He, isn't somebody that doesn't have a party reputation or anything like that. Seems like he would fit in quite well in that market. And with a team that has a strong plan for what they want to do, right? Like they're a big deal in their community. I always used to say they're the only pro team in town. That's not the case anymore because you got the hockey team now, so I can't say that. But it's the Jazz are the pro team in that market, right? They're the team that I know you have the new hockey team, but they're the focus from what I understand. So that'll be good for him. I mean, that's the way it is in Durham, right? Duke is the focus, and we have Carolina down the road and State and all that. But I mean, this is a college basketball market. College basketball is everything. He was on a pedestal here, and I would think it'd be kind of a similar situation there with whoever the star player of the Jazz is the hottest thing in town, right?
Well, you're absolutely right. That's a correct assessment, and the hunger for Cooper Flagg to be in a Jazz uniform is already insane. Even though we got to see how the lottery shakes out, but just the possibility of it has Jazz fans salivating because this is a guy that we watched and we tuned in. I think as a market, we probably tune in for more Duke basketball than is typically the case to see if he was what he was billed to be. And at least at the college level, he absolutely was. And you already talked about the fact that he was a reclassified and he's so young, even for a college freshman, just turned 18 a few months ago. Like, the sky seems to be the limit for him. How much upward development do you think there is in these early years of his NBA career, whether that's in Salt Lake City or elsewhere?
Yeah, there is room to grow, and there's tremendous talent there, and we already saw it this year when he led Duke in every category, right? Steals, assists, blocks, all that stuff. And that's a tremendous accomplishment for any team, but he also did it for a team that was 35-4, was one of the top 4 best teams in the country. So that tells you what kind of talent he has. But yes, there's room to grow. He can be a better 3-point shooter. He can be a better finisher inside, even though he did a lot of that well. But he, we know what happened at the end of the Houston game, right, where he had the shot to win it, and he dismissed it. He had some games like that earlier this year where he, missed a shot late, had a turnover against Kentucky, they didn't finish off a win against Kansas because of some turnovers late in that game. He had the game. I'm talking about all 4 Duke's losses here. There's only 4 of them, but he had a chance to win the game at Clemson, and he hit a wet spot on the court and slipped and fell and traveled. And that's one of those things that happens. But that's the one part of his game he didn't get to showcase in college was hitting a big shot to win a game. And so he still has that to do, and he'll have plenty of opportunities to do that in the NBA, and he will do that down the road. He has that kind of ability because he can do anything you want to do on the court. He can shoot 3-pointers, he can score inside, he can pass, he can defend, he can do all that. So he'll get the opportunity to do that. But that's the box he still has to check, and that's going to happen.
Some people like playing this game, other people don't. Is there an NBA comparison for Cooper Flag that you think is accurate?
The one that it's Scottie Pippen kind of fits that. If we want to go back a little bit, a couple decades here, I do a podcast with Sheldon Williams, the former NBA player who played at Duke, and he was kind of telling me during one of our episodes he's not Michael Jordan, he's more Scottie Pippen, and that's not a knock on him at all. I mean, he could score 40 points a game if you need him to, but they don't always need him to. He's in the NCAA tournament, he averaged 21 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. So whatever you kind of need on a certain night, he can deliver it. He had a 30-point game in the Sweet 16, but he also had games where he had 7 or 8 assists. So that's kind of the comp, I think, is that he's so versatile and he's such a great defender that he can do whatever you need on a certain night to win a game.
The NIL world is obviously just insane in college sports, and certainly it applied to Duke basketball and will continue to apply to Duke basketball. Duke is a bit of a unique thing because we're looking at a lot of these other programs where the lion's share of this revenue sharing model is going to go to support football, and a lot of NIL collectives, it's football first, and then we'll see what we can do with basketball. Is my assessment correct? My impression correct that that's flipped on its head at Duke? That basketball gets first bite at the apple, and then football is next?
Yeah, I mean, basketball's got around, about $10 million a year maybe for the NIL budget, and football's a little bit more still, but because it has to be. But basketball gets its share. Let's put it that way. And they have a kind of a separate collective just for men's basketball as opposed to all the other sports at Duke. So that tells you where that is. I mean, it is the sport here. I mean, it's what this athletic department has been built upon is greatness in men's college basketball. So they want to be great at everything, but they're going to be great at men's college basketball. You can bet on that. Now, that doesn't mean they've totally forgotten football because this year they went out with their quarterback. They had Malik Murphy, who set the school record for touchdown passes in a single season last year. He came from Texas on an NIL deal, a good one. And he was prepared to come back for next year. And they saw Darian Mensah at Tulane, thought he was a better quarterback for them. And so they told Malik, hey, man, there's no money for you next year. We're going to go get this other guy from Tulane. Something I never thought I'd see Duke do in football. It's something as cutthroat as that. And they did it. And they paid him, around $4 million a year to come this year and play quarterback for him. So they care about football here because they have to have a seat at the table. But don't let that think that basketball is going to be slighted because it's not going to be.
So as you move on, as Duke has to move on from, Cooper Flag, it's not like things slow down. You got the Boozers coming in, and obviously there's a connection from this market to their father who played here, and the twins were born in Salt Lake City, if I'm not mistaken, while he was a player here for the Utah Jazz. So what's the excitement like for Cam Boozer to come in and to have his brother there with him?
Yeah, it's big, and I won't compare it to Cooper last year because he was such a generational player that, everybody knew he was going to be a superstar. And they think Cam's going to be a superstar too, but there's only generational players every once in a while, right? That's what we call it, generational players. But there is excitement already looking forward to next year. That's always the case. There's a tremendous disappointment that this team did not win the national championship this year, and some people are still getting over that. Many people are, including in the Duke basketball building and among the coaching staff. They're all incredibly disappointed at the way last season ended, but they're proud of all they accomplished. But they're also already moving and looking at building the roster for next year, and knowing that Cam Boozer is going to be a special talent and is going to be a lottery pick, it looks like, and could be a top 5 pick just like Cooper Flag. So that's something to build around and always something to look forward to when it comes to the next season for Duke basketball.
Have you noticed, obviously you're very close to these athletic programs, and the conversation, where we talk Utah sports here every single day on my show, and there are people in the community that are just like, man, I don't know how much longer I can do this because the roster turnover is even more significant than it used to be, and it is cutthroat, like you were just talking about with that quarterback situation at Duke. That's a shocking one to me. Because a lot of the cutthroat perception is like these players have no loyalty. I don't know that programs do either. Having been around these sports for a while, I don't know. This is a big picture question, I guess, but is there a level of fatigue? Does it diminish the love or the interest? Or especially for Duke basketball, I mean, this is an institution in American sports. Is the love and the passion just as strong in the fan base, given the changes that we've experienced in college football and college basketball?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some fatigue with that. I think there definitely is, especially among the older fans who are used to the old way. And frankly, a lot of those guys are the people, men and women, are the ones that are paying these salaries, right? The big boosters. You have to be kind of far into your career to be able to afford to give at that level. But so yeah, there is some fatigue with that, and they're going to have to work through that. And the sport is working through it now. When the House settlement gets done, and we move on to different things, eventually, I think we're going to see, contracts and employment and stuff like that. It's almost inevitable that we're going to get there eventually. So, the younger people in the sport are more open to change. And I mean, I think we all agree that the athletes should be getting some compensation here. It's past time that happened, and it is a good thing that they have some rights now. And so the schools used to have all the power. Now this flipped the other way, and sometimes the students are getting it too, and the athletes are. So that's a good thing. But yeah, it's something that the sport is working through, and they are going to lose some fans along the way. I think that's happening, but there's still plenty of people that still are supporting these programs and watching them on TV.
Well, Steve, my hope here, and our hope collectively as a Salt Lake community, is that Cooper Flagg ends up in a Utah Jazz uniform. And if that happens, maybe you can come on out, do a Where Are They Now kind of coverage on the game and lunch on us. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, and I would enjoy that. I appreciate the invite, and we'll see what happens. It could work out well for everybody.
That's Steve Wiseman, Duke men's basketball insider, podcast host on the Believe Network. You heard him along with Sheldon Williams talking a lot of Duke athletics. And by the way, I had not heard that Malik Murphy story. That's a cutthroat world, man. And that's not Alabama football. That's not Ohio State football doing that. That's not the University of Miami or Georgia. That is Duke, where football is second fiddle to men's basketball. And they're just like, ha-ha, you gave us record-setting numbers? Goodbye. We like the Tulane kid better. That's nuts, man. I don't know that
Duke, where a 7-5 season is a fantastic year in football.
I don't know. I don't know that all coaching staffs are that cutthroat, especially kind of at that. Duke is not a top tier football school, right? I don't know if it's that cutthroat everywhere, but if that number is accurate, you're tossing $4 million at a quarterback when the guy that was already in the building for you was killing it. That's wild. So don't blame only the players when you do the this is ruining college football thing. This is ruining college sports. This system, the coaches are sometimes willing and cutthroat participants in it as much as, or in that case, even more so than players are. Wow. Big thanks to Steve Wiseman for joining us and giving us that little aside as well. I mean, we'll keep covering Cooper Flagg. We'll keep covering the NBA draft, and hopefully we'll should we hedge here? Should we do the insurance thing that we should do, where we don't only talk about Cooper Flagg, and we're just like, let's get the Ace Bailey expert on, and let's get the VJ Edgecombe expert on.
That's the plan on my end of things here. We will have, speaking of VJ Edgecombe, we will have Bryce Cherry from a Waco. I don't have the newspaper name pulled up, but a local Waco newspaper. That he'll be coming on next week. Are you not a subscriber to the Waco newspaper, James? I sadly am not. Why would you? I should be now that we're having him on the show. That's a conference opponent for Utah. What are you doing? Right. You should have subscriptions to all 16. What are you doing? What am I doing? Yeah, but we are, until we know what the Jazz's draft position will be, we both figured it'd be a good idea to get scouting report on some of these players, starting with Cooper Flagg, of course, and some of the other ones that they might end up picking in the top 5. VJ Edgecombe being one of them. We'll get them on next week. We're efforting a Rutgers writer to talk about the Rutgers players, and probably we'll get our guy Josh Newman on, who was just recently covered University of Texas, to talk. They've got a player that is a top 5 projected pick as well. So, yeah, we're doing that just in case.
I think we're manifesting though that it'll be Cooper Flag. I've changed my tune.
Yeah, I can hear that. You've come around.
Well, I haven't. I don't have an internal belief, but you know how you can kind of speak things into existence.
At least you're trying that.
And there's that study that like if you smile, it actually improves your mood. There's the chicken and the egg thing. Like smiling does something to your brain, and then it makes you feel happier. That's what we're doing right now.
Well, they say that when you're learning to be on-air talent too, when you smile, you sound more likable. You sound more excited about what you're talking about.
Is that why I'm so unlikable? Is that I don't smile enough when we're doing radio?
See, you're smirking as you said that. I heard a difference.
Okay. All right. Maybe that's better. Maybe I need to just have a creepy smile on my face. Tune into the YouTube and watch.
Okay, well that did not have the desired effect.
Why so serious?
Oh, boy.
NBA playoffs are underway. Some crazy performances, big games last night. And you know what? I'm going to make a case. I'm anti-poster dunk. I'll tell you why next. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Little NBA playoff discussion. Plenty of Big 12 players in the NBA, and that's brought to you by Mountainland Supply, mountainlandsupply.com, or any of their physical locations for any remodel or refurbishment or upgrade needs for your home. mountainlandsupply.com. Sean O'Connell show here.
We previewed a conversation about a Big 12 player, VJ Edgecombe, about to enter the draft. So there you go.
There you go. All right, so the NBA playoffs underway. I tuned in after putting the kids to bed. I tuned in for Lakers Timberwolves at the exact moment where Anthony Edwards put maybe the best poster dunk of the year on display. Now, I have expressed this opinion before. I'm going to do it again. It was an unreal play by Anthony Edwards.
Especially in a playoff game in the second half when you're down, 15 at that point. Like, that's ballsy of Anthony Edwards to go for that.
And you know what? Like, the bench reacted. It was like a good, energetic moment for the Timberwolves. Like, it doesn't ultimately lead to a victory.
In the moment, it kind of felt like it might be a turning point.
A little momentum shift, potentially. The bench got up crazy and all pointed at. Bench celebrations in the NBA are not as good as bench celebrations in college basketball. The college basketball bench guys, they're better. But the NBA bench, that was a wild one. They were really excited, and he reacted to them. Almost got himself in a little bit of trouble defensively because he spent too much time reacting with his teammates that were on the bench. They were on the Timberwolves bench offensive end at that point. The reason I don't like our collective celebration of posterizations, or the way we celebrate them, I should say, is because it diminishes the desire of players to play good defense. There are plenty of guys who make the executive decision in that moment with Ant-Man coming downhill and launching from almost the free throw line to they get out of the way.
I'm going to let him have this.
Or they do kind of like the courtesy, like the fat man jog in football where it looks like you're running, but you're really not. They give like the jump and just kind of throw their arm up loosely.
I had a coach who called it the Olay.
Yeah, they do the Olay. They deliberately jump out of the way.
Yeah.
Like they go up and they put their hand in the vicinity of the player and the ball, but they've deliberately created a trajectory with their elevation that takes them away from danger.
I'm very good at that in pickup basketball because I'm not about taking charges when we're playing for fun. Okay, I'm not sure I took a charge when I didn't play for fun either.
James, that's shameful because you're a big body guy. You could really be discouraging people infiltrating the lane at church ball.
Oh, I did the intimidation thing, standing in the middle, playing in the middle on that 2-3 zone. Don't you worry about that. But if they're coming by and it's either let them have a layup or I take a charge, you can have the layup. I do the Olay.
All right, well,
and pick up ball.
You don't have to make the decision on whether or not you're going to try to block what is eventually going to be a dunk. And it was like a two-handed, wrapped around, because it was a great defensive play. This is what bothered me so much about, and that's the only appropriate reaction, to react to oh my gosh, look at that dunk, because it was amazing. But it was also an awesome defensive play that Anthony Edwards just negated by being even more awesome. Reeves goes up.
He didn't just own the guy. Reeves made a good play on the ball, and he beat him.
He got his hand on the ball. He goes up, palm of his hand at the apex of his jump, contacts ball, all ball, body straight up, no foul, right? It was a great defensive play. And then Anthony Edwards was just like, doesn't matter because I'm a superhero. And it's like he had enough hang time in the air, and you could do the whole thing where it's like a Marvel movie where suddenly the Quicksilver character, you go slow motion and everything's, it's like he goes up and two-hand grip, meets the opposition of the block, and it's just like, you know what? No, I'm going to recalibrate, and then he wraps it around the blocking hand. He takes the ball, removes it from the contact of Reeves' palm, and he wraps it around to the backside of his wrist, and his momentum carries both of them to the rim, and he dunks it home. What?
Where in that description was Reeves making a bad defensive play?
He did nothing wrong. It was like, I can't imagine how frustrating that whole situation is, where you're just like, first, do I try to block this? Yes, I do. Is this going to be a foul that sends him to the free throw line? Okay, that's
Maybe.
better.
Yeah.
That's better than getting dunked on. That's fine. And then he's going up. If the slow motion thing is happening for Ant-Man, it's also happening for Reeves, right? Where he's probably just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to block him. I'm meeting him up here. We're 97 feet above the wood floor below us. This is incredible. I've never jumped this high in my life. I really rose to the occasion here. Oh, let me get my hand in the right position. Straight up, hand on the ball. I am actually touching leather. I got my hand on the ball.
I blocked his dunk.
I'm blocking the dunk. I am the greatest defensive force in the National Basketball Association. That's probably all going through his head. And then, wait, what's happening? How's he able to do that? He's wrapping his arms around my defensive posture, and now, we're dunked on, and the whole arena is going crazy, and his bench is just like, you stink. And everybody is going to see what? They're going to see the poster shot, not the perfect elevation, the great placement on the ball. That's what Anthony Edwards does to you. This kid is so bleeping good.
He really is, and he might be the guy that is the most fun to watch in the league right now. Maybe Wemby, I take that back. Wemby's the most fun to watch. Anthony Edwards might be the second most fun guy to watch in the league right now because he has such a charisma too. He's not the most skilled. You'd like him to be a better, more accurate 3-point shooter. You'd like him to be a better free throw shooter. Those are a couple of things. But and for some of those reasons, you can't say he's the best player in the league, but he is so fun to watch.
He's incredibly fun to watch. It's also those things that I think he's gonna, because he's like the little miniature younger Blake Griffin right now.
Yeah,
where there's just so much high amplitude athleticism to his game that at some point he's going to have to shoot his way. He's going to have to be in the gym shooting his way into a more well-rounded game, or else it falls off.
He has improved. He has improved significantly since he got in the league at some of those shooting things I pointed out that are still one of the bigger weaknesses of his game, but they're still not where you'd like your best player go-to scorer to be in today's game, where the outside shot and free throw shooting is so important. But yeah, he just, what I said before, he's so, because of that charisma, he's so ballsy. He thinks in a playoff game when I'm down 15 points, there's a couple of guys between me and the rim on the road. My team needs a jolt. Well, why don't I just poster dunk why don't I just do a poster dunk on somebody here? Like it's nothing. Like not many people in the history of the game do that.
And by the way, he's the perfect guy to pair with somebody who's like super solid but a little bit boring, like a Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
If you're gonna spend all that money and all that draft capital to get somebody like Rudy Gobert, and you don't have a dynamic scorer on the other end that can like sort of balance out not only the actual competitive nature of it, but also the intrigue of it, that's a perfect pairing, in my opinion, for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
And Donovan,
I wish so badly, by the way, that with Anthony Edwards, the wild conspiracy theory that he's the love child of Michael Jordan, I wish that were true.
Yeah, there's that for Jimmy Butler too. There's every year Jimmy Butler goes off in the playoffs. There's that side by side where they cut them in half and put their faces together and be like, oh look, they look exactly the same. So
I wish it were true.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I bet if you're the actual father of either of those individuals, when people bring that up. You're probably so mad. It's like, what the hell?
Jimmy Butler the second. Jimmy Butler Jr., I guess, is what he goes by, because Jimmy Butler is Jimmy Butler the third.
Okay.
He travels with him all the time.
And can you imagine, like, people are just like, hey, Michael Jordan might be his dad. You're just like, hello?
I'm right here.
Hello?
Have you watched any of Netflix's Starting Five?
No.
It's like the football documentaries they did for NBA, followed them last season. I've started to watch it. It's pretty good. That's where I learned Jimmy Butler's dad is just with him all the time.
Wow.
And I did think that. I'm like, wait, that doesn't look like Michael Jordan.
That's not Michael Jordan. All right. Got to take a quick one here. Before we do, a reminder to all of you out there, Advanced Windows, 801-850-9100 is running a deal for our listeners. $2,500 off 10 windows or more. If you want new windows for your home, they're the phone to call. That's the number to call, 801-850-9100. If you're not sure whether now's the right time, just call them, get on the schedule, have them come out and tell you. They're not just going to sell you this thing. They're not going to be high pressure, kind of like, oh, you need these, you need these. If you don't, they're going to tell you what issues your home is having with the windows, with the energy efficiency, maybe related to your old windows, and they're going to give you the knowledge necessary to make an informed decision for yourself. Yes, they have financing options. Yes, it is a lifetime guarantee on the windows. Yes, all of that is done here in-state, in-house, right here in Salt Lake City. The sales staff, the installation staff, the warranty coverage, it is all handled right here. There is no middleman. Advanced Windows, advancedwindows.com, 801-850-9100, $2,500 off 10 windows or more. And maybe you don't need new windows. Maybe you already called Advanced and you got the new windows, but it's time to upgrade the style of your home and you need the window coverings that are a little bit more up to date. They've got that covered for you as well. Tell them OC sent you at advancedwindows.com. The greatest football recruiting job in the state of Utah is not done by Utah State. It is not done by the University of Utah. It is not done by BYU. It is not even a college team. We have to get to this next. There is one place recruiting better than anybody else is, and the proof is in the draft pudding. 3 minutes from now, Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
It's looking out for a brother. That's what it is. I saw one of my brothers yesterday in a real good emergency. So since we are a family, I'm looking out for my brother.
Oh, look out for
brother!
that.
I saw you. I saw you. I had to buy you this because you know, brother looks out for another brother.
Oh, a pea bucket. Hey, I'm gonna use this.
Hey, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
I saw you in a hurry yesterday, so I needed you.
Bucket.com.
Hey, no more running.
Oh, that's nice.
He said that's nice.
Pedro Martinez made a return to the set of Inside the NBA and gave Shaq a little gift to help him next time he has a potty emergency. Inside the NBA last night. That sound courtesy of TNT Sports. They also had a porta potty on set. Porta potty?
Yeah,
porta potty.
Porta potty.
Porta potty? Yeah. So,
And
still leaning into the joke.
He went in the porta potty, acted like Shaq was weirdly leaning into it. It was like, I give him credit for doing so, but also it was like, other people are the ones that poke fun, and then you laugh at yourself. You don't poke fun at yourself. It was very strange.
Well, he was just trying to ride the wave because you deny it, then yikes, it gets worse. Yeah. All right, so the NFL draft is starting tomorrow, and there's a name of a locally connected prospect that we have not talked about enough on this show. Jackson Dart played high school football in the state of Utah. All right, started his career at Roy High School. Shout out to my guy, Freddie Fernandez. And then ended up as the National Player of the Year, Max Prep's National Player of the Year, Gatorade Player of the Year at Corner Canyon his senior year. Crazy numbers. And I think he finished with like 11,000 yards of offense as a high school player. Obviously committed to USC, ended up transferring to Ole Miss. Jackson Dart is, according to a lot of the conversations, he's QB3 in this draft. And there's even some people who think that maybe he could leapfrog over Shedeur Sanders. I think he's going to be a first-round draft pick, which means...
Yeah, if not first round, early, probably second rounder, right? But if he is a first rounder...
Well, this is only a good point if he ends up being a first-rounder. But, like, Utah has not had 2 first-round quarterbacks drafted in the last 5 years. It hasn't happened. BYU hasn't had 2 first-round quarterbacks drafted in the last 5 years. Outside of actual, like, hardcore blue blood college football programs, it's not even realistic to expect that you can generate multiple first-round quarterbacks in such a short span of time. And yet Corner Canyon High School is recruiting better than anyone in the state is, because I shouldn't say recruiting. They are acquiring talent better than anyone is, because Zach Wilson.
They've been very fortunate that these very talented football players are just wanting to move to Draper.
They just love, like, I know I was playing for Jordan my whole life in Sandy, but Draper is really calling my name, so now I'm going to go play for Corner Canyon. And then the same true, obviously, for Jackson Dart. Look, if you're recruiting, fine. By the way, there's reports out there in other states, and I hope it never gets here in Utah. But, like, the NIL, the transfer portal thing in other states for high school football, I read something the other day that there was a kid who turned down $750,000 in a transfer offer as a high school athlete. That makes me sick.
It really does.
There's just no – anyway, back to the point I'm trying to make here. Corner Canyon has an opportunity to produce 2 first-round quarterbacks in the span of 5 years. That's bananas for a high school. In Draper, Utah, Eric Kerr has done remarkable things with that program. Obviously, it's an absolute juggernaut of a recruiting place. Players go there partially because I'm sure that there's some sort of incentive for them to go there. They want to win or want to compete for state championships very consistently. But the development thing is real. Like, Eric Kerr was a college football player himself, and he knows what it takes to get guys to the next level, and he has proven over and over and over and over again that even when guys transfer in, even if they were great where they were before, they get better when they're at Corner Canyon. The development continues and increases at Corner Canyon. And I know there are plenty of high school coaches listening. There are plenty of parents at other high schools that are just like, don't give them credit. Look, you have to be honest with yourself. The guy has produced something special down there, and I think he deserves credit for it. And if you're a college athlete, or if you want to be if you're an aspiring college athlete, if you're a high school athlete in the state of Utah that wants to go to a big place, wants to get the attention of Oregon, USC, Ohio State, Texas, etc., one of the best ways to do it, James Peterson, is to put yourself on the Corner Canyon roster. Those schools will find you if you're not at Corner Canyon, but they'll find you a heck of a lot easier if you put yourself on that roster. So even though back in my day it was Skyline that was always dealing with the recruiting allegations, and I won't call them allegations because they did actively ask people to come from out of boundaries and play for Skyline. I know this, all right?
No. Breaking news.
But look, they were the best program in the state at the time, and then it became Northridge, and they were the best program in the state at the time. And then Cottonwood had its little run, and then
Bingham had a long run too, right?
Bingham, yeah. So it goes in a cycle here, and the case for all of those, or most of those programs, was they won a lot, and then they got the attention of universities, and those universities trusted the coaches that were winning to produce big-time players for them. And Corner Canyon is on the precipice, potentially, of having 2 NFL, not like, hey, you got a D1 scholarship, good for you, NFL first-rounders that played quarterback at that school, potentially, in the span of 5 years.
2 NFL first-rounders, and because you're a first-rounder, you're going to get the opportunity to start right away most of the time. Like Zach Wilson, not a starter anymore in the NFL, but NFL starter at one point, and Jackson Dart, if he goes in the first round, could also be first-round picks and NFL starting quarterbacks.
I think that officially my high school, Jordan High, which has been in existence since like 1907, I think officially one NFL player from the school. Shout out Tyler Larson, offensive lineman, center, played at Utah State, has had carved out a nice little career for himself in the NFL. His older brother Cody also got at least his cup of coffee. So, but like one actual like bona fide stay in the league type player from my high school. Corner Canyon's been around for like 10 minutes, and they're potentially going to get their second first-round quarterback drafted. Whoa. That's excellent talent recognition right there. However they get it to come, that's up to the UHSAA to decide. ESPN 792.1 FM's Festival of Tees continues, powered by the Utah Golf Association. We are giving away free rounds of golf every day to the best courses in the state and beyond. Scott Mitchell does it on Down and Dirty. I do it right here on the Sean O'Connell Show. And The Drive, Spence Checketts gives away golf. Listen to that from 2 to 6 for your chance to win. Glendale is we got 18 or is it 9?
18 to Glendale.
18 to Glendale. If you can answer today's trivia question coming up in about 43 minutes. Devin Jackson joins us on the other side to talk NFL draft. The first round starts tomorrow. It'll be a big weekend. Where do the locals end up? Where's Jackson Dart going to get drafted? We'll start the conversation there with Devin Jackson in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, hour number 3 on Utah's number 1 sports talk, ESPN 700. Talking NFL draft. First round begins tomorrow. Green Bay, Wisconsin hosting. Man, it'd be so fun to host a draft, but you got to be an NFL city, I think. Salt Lake is pretty outside the purview at this point, at least. Devin Jackson joins us, NFL Draft Insider, to give us some insight on what may or may not happen in tomorrow's first round and beyond. Devin, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on, and looking forward to talking through this first round coming up tomorrow here in Green Bay, and a nice sunny day after raining this morning. So looking forward to hopefully some good weather tomorrow night at Lambeau Field.
Let's start with the Lambeau Field thing. I mean, obviously, like an historic, storied place in the NFL. Is Green Bay a good host city for the first round of the draft?
We'll see. You know, I went to the Kansas City drive a few years ago, and you know, the backdrop and everything that was set up was fantastic. Obviously, a lot to do in Kansas City. So we'll see how it all shakes out Thursday night and see what it's like, you know, what the weather is like, and just what it looks like under the lights. You know, I think it's a great historic place to be and to have the draft, and I'm looking forward to seeing what exactly they put on. I know they've been working on it the last couple of years, security-wise and everything else. So it should be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
I want to start the conversation with a Utah high school product that I think hopes to hear his name called in the first round. I'm talking about Jackson Dart, and I just last segment I was talking about how insane it is that in the Salt Lake City suburbs there's a high school where he attended. He finished there, at least his senior year was there, that produced Zach Wilson as a first-round draft pick a few years ago, and now could produce Jackson Dart as a first-round draft pick at the quarterback position. That's something that's supposed to happen at like Mater Dei or South Lake Carroll, IMG Academy. We're not used to that being the case potentially with a Utah suburb high school. But is it going to happen? Is Jackson Dart going to get his name called on day one?
You know, I think right now probably not, but I know a few teams are really interested in him and could make a move to trade up for him towards the end of round 1. So I don't think it's an impossible thing for it to happen. You know, I know that he's garnered a lot of attention around the league, and you know, I know a team like the New Orleans Saints are really interested in him and really to look to draft him. So I think there's a small possibility that he goes in the first round, but at the very least, I think right now I feel pretty good about 2 going, and Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, but we'll see if a third sneaks in the back end of round 1.
It looks like he's not going to attend the draft, right? He backed out. He was one of the original list that was expected to attend, but he's not actually going to attend. Is that updated still?
Yeah, that's correct. You know, he was not there this morning. They had like a prospect availability where they did NFL Play 60 event with the Special Olympics, and he was not in attendance this morning. So I don't think he'll be here in Green Bay.
All right. So this draft has, of course, a lot of conversation around Cam Ward, who we expect to be the number 1 overall pick. I shouldn't say we. Do you expect him to be the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, everything is pointing towards him being a number 1 pick tomorrow night.
Okay. And then the Shedeur Sanders conversation, which I know we had last time, but there's always new stuff developing. And I'm not his biggest fan, but then I saw the anonymous quote from an assistant coach from an NFL talking head, someone in a team, in an organizational position where maybe he can affect the draft position of Shedeur Sanders, just like trashing everything about the guy. And I think if you're going to do that, you should put your name on it. I know that you probably can't in some cases in the NFL, but what has been the reaction to that from the Sanders camp and from the rest of the NFL?
Yeah, I think everyone just didn't like the way that was portrayed and the way that he's been portrayed, you know, at some points of the draft process. Like, you know, I think you have to understand, like, of course, he's a son of NFL legend. You know, he plays with a lot of bravado, and he's just that type of player where, you know, he's going to let you know about it. But I don't think you should go to that point where, you know, there's someone within the league, you know, not putting out unfavorable quotes about Shedeur. And I just think on both sides of the coin, why, you know, some people either really love him or some people just really dislike him. And I feel like it's okay to be somewhere in the middle. Maybe you don't love him as a prospect or a player, but I think all these guys are trying to achieve their NFL dreams, and you shouldn't be trashing a player trying to make a living for himself and follow his dream. So I think on both sides of the coin, it's been negative reactions to Shedeur Sanders and what he brings to the table. But overall, I think he's a player that is going to help an NFL franchise. Whether he gets selected early in the first round or later in the first round.
So a lot of attention justifiably goes to the top of the draft and the players that are in kind of that top 10 range. And, of course, if you're selected there, you're going to a team that probably needs a lot of help, that doesn't have a track record of success, at least recently, and you might be in for a bit of a slog. To be a later round pick, you could end up going to the Philadelphia Eagles. You could end up being picked by the Kansas City Chiefs, who seem to always be in the conversation. You could be picked by the Buffalo Bills. Those teams that are like a player away, a snap away, a penalty away, that are actually Super Bowl contenders. What are those teams looking at right now in this draft, in the late part of the first round?
Yeah, I think those last three teams you mentioned are looking for more trench help. I think that's kind of been a separation between, maybe some teams picking in the top 10 versus later in the round, is that most of them have some good foundation up front, on both the offensive and defensive lines. And, when you make a living that way and have that philosophy, then it's always going to be a priority for you, especially in the first round. And especially since you're picking so late in the first round. So I think all three of those teams are looking for trench help. I know like the Chiefs need a starting left tackle for next year. And I think, they have a chance to get one later in the first round. You look at the Buffalo Bills, they're looking for some difference makers along the defensive line and potentially a corner. And then you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, same thing, defensive line and possibly adding to the secondary and, at the safety position. So I think all three of those teams, have an identity in the trenches and wanting to have that talent up front. And I think that's how you stay good long in the NFL, by building out the depth and talent along your front seven and front five along the offensive line to continue to have that success, no matter who's at quarterback, no matter who, is at running back. You got to have that talent up front to make plays and build the foundation for your football team.
Devin Jackson, NFL draft analyst, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Draft tomorrow, first round at least tomorrow, and you can listen to it right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. For the small schools, and I don't just mean like the FCS or Division II, that you'll find guys that sneak into the draft from these places, but not the Power Four programs. Who's producing something this year that maybe will bring attention to that program, to that coaching staff, whatever? Is there somebody from, I don't know, a Mountain West Conference school, a Conference USA school that you could see sneaking into the upper portion of this draft?
Well, I mean, the first one that comes to mind, obviously, is Ashton Jeanty, when he was able to do at Boise State this past year and the past couple of years, and been able to dominate the Mountain West Conference, making a college football playoff appearance. I think that first comes to mind as kind of a school that you wouldn't think will be producing a potential top 10 pick. So I think Ashton Jeanty, deserves a lot of credit for what he's done at Boise State, being the Heisman runner-up and just all the records that he set while he was at Boise State, and coming close to setting, the all-time single season rushing record as well. So I want to give him a shout out, because I feel like he's a guy that doesn't really get talked about a ton, because people expect him to go in the first round and expect him to go early. But I think the Boise State program in general, we're going to have some more draft picks. Maybe one or two more this year, but over the next couple of years, because they're going to get a big influx of talent. So I will give them a good shout out, and then I'll give a shout out to Toledo as well. They produced Quinyon Mitchell last year, who went to the Eagles and had a big rookie season. They have a defensive tackle, Darius Alexander, who should, be garnering some late first round, early second round, buzz, and should go early in the second round if he doesn't hear his name called tomorrow night. So I'll give Boise State and Toledo. Two programs are in a not in the group or in the Power Four, but have done some really nice things over the last couple of years.
How has the draft and evaluation process changed with college football being more of a business now, and guys already having played in a high-profile situation for maybe 2 or 3 teams before they get to the NFL draft scouting process? Does it alter the evaluation methods, the conversations, the workload for scouts and teams? Because now you got like multiple coaching staffs, presumably, that you got to discuss things with. How has it changed things, if at all?
I think just in general that NFL franchises have to understand that the changes that college football is going through, and understand that it's no longer a industry where you stay at one team, and the transfer portal, the emergence of that. I think all of those things are into account, and being able to understand and got the way that I guess NFL front offices thought before, are different from where they were, even a few years ago, and players understand too that teams are going to ask about that in the draft process. You transferring to a couple of different schools, maybe looking for different opportunities. Is that something they will have to worry about at the NFL level? If you don't get playing time or things don't go your way, you're going to try and want out. So I think you certainly on both sides of the coin, you have to understand, the evaluation process, that you'll get asked about those things. In addition to understanding, just the total landscape change, and accepting that, you could be lower on a player that has transferred a few times, but unless you really get to know them and know their situation, understand why. Sometimes it's family reasons. Sometimes it's, there's a good portion that maybe is monetarily wise. They're looking for other, opportunities, but sometimes it's family, sometimes it's being closer to home. So I think you just got to be able to parse out those things and understand just how different each, and take it case by case.
So the venerable boxer Marvin Hagler had the iconic quote, "It's tough to get out of bed to do road work at 5 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk pajamas." And, of course, he was talking about how success can sometimes rob people of motivation. And, again, monetary success is something that college athletes didn't even get to imagine 10 years ago. And now these guys are coming in with $10 million in their pocket potentially. The motivation for players at the top of this draft to continue to, work on the craft, work on their bodies, et cetera. Have we seen any effect on that with the changes in college football?
Yeah, I think it's become more paramount that, of course, if you want to stay in school longer, there's that injury risk as well, where, you got to be able to obviously be in the best shape as possible, and continue to strengthen yourself as well through the strength conditioning programs, but also seeking things, outside of just what the school is offering, because, schools can only prepare you for so much in the rigors of the NFL. And you see a lot of college players seeking out, current NFL players, maybe guys from the cities that they grew up in or the cities that they play in, and seeking them out to work out with them and getting to know the NFL regimen. One good example that I can think of is Abdul Carter, who is expected to go at the top of the draft. He worked out with Micah Parsons last summer. So I think that's been more of an emphasis in kind of the changed landscape. And you also got to be seeking out, other sources of knowledge and working out and just continuing to strengthen and hone in on your game. There's specialized coaches as well for like pass rushers, for quarterbacks. So there's so much that goes into the game. Basically, you're preparing yourself like a professional mindset, even at the college level, just because the turnover every year at your college, and you want to be able to get to that next level, and you can't just do it from the resources inside of the building. So you've seen it kind of really evolve where it's really truly a full year sport where you got to be able to be working on your body and working on your craft and game, even in the off season, even in the down months, the cold months of the year. So you really have seen that kind of shift as well, and posted on social media as well. In addition to that.
In a draft that lacks consensus beyond maybe pick number one and even, evaluating important positional players, do you think that makes it more likely or less likely that we see trades and teams moving up to get the guy that they're in love with but maybe nobody else knows about?
Yeah, I think in this particular draft, with just kind of the boards being completely different across team to team, I think you're going to see a little bit more aggressiveness than even in past drafts, where a player is in a spot that you didn't expect them to be, and that in this draft maybe a particular position, the drop off at that position after the first round or even after the second or third round starts to drop off, you're going to get aggressive and go get the guy you want. So I think with this draft not being heavy in quarterback, heavy in receiver, I can see a lot of teams deciding like, hey, I want this impact defensive lineman. Here late in the first round, I didn't expect them to be here. Why don't we move up, 4 or 5 spots to get them? So, there's been even some rumblings leading up to the draft that maybe the Bears could be a team that trade up into the top 5 or 6 to get a guy like Ashton Genty. Like 49ers might be interested in trading up to get a guy along the defensive line. So I think a lot of teams are, especially with no consensus across the board. And usually there isn't any draft, but I think in this draft in particular, there's just so much parity in how each team values and evaluates each prospect that you can see a lot of movement in the first round.
Devin, enjoyed the draft. Appreciate you giving us your insights again today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Devin Jackson, NFL Draft Insider in Green Bay, ready to enjoy the first round. Look, I think it's really cool that the NFL is now moving the first round of the draft around to different cities. I've said this for years. I think what they should do, because it's something you can't put an NFL game in Salt Lake City. It just logistically doesn't make sense. I guess you could do it at the University of Utah, but the NFL teams don't want to do that. The draft is something that you could take to non-NFL cities. They already love you enough in Green Bay. The Packers fans are going to pack that place out whether you bring them a draft or not. You don't have to convince them to love the NFL anymore in Green Bay, Wisconsin. You don't have to convince them to love the NFL anymore in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Like, bring the draft to a place like Salt Lake City. They did it in Vegas before Vegas had a team, right? Or
no, the Raiders were
already there
by that time, but yeah.
But bring it to places where you don't have an NFL team. If you had the first round of the NFL draft in Salt Lake City, Utah, right? Fans from Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Northern Nevada, Utah, obviously.
Western Colorado.
You just everyone would descend upon this and just be like, this is the greatest thing ever. Put one in New England where they don't, not in New England, not in Boston.
Not in Massachusetts.
You know what I mean? Throw it at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut.
Yes.
And let all those people, although New Englanders, man, I don't know why I offered that as a suggestion, because they are the biggest pain. But imagine if you settled down the first round of the NFL draft in bona fide SEC country. You took
Put it in Tuscaloosa.
Imagine you take it to Alabama.
Or Baton Rouge.
Did you see the graphics that I retweeted today, by the way? You know what? I'll get to some of the draft by the numbers.
Okay.
That I.
Yes, the Pick Six previews.
Yeah, the Pick Six previews
Shout
numbers.
Shout out to our guy Brett Ciancia, friend of the station.
Does a great preseason guide, rivals that of even Phil Steele.
Yeah, and I mean he's got a pinned tweet that says at least one of the years, whoever evaluates those things have said that his is the best preview guide. So yeah, I've made this argument about preseason games too. OC, put one. I don't know if teams would feel slighted by having to sacrifice a preseason home game, but instead of trying to appeal to European sports fans, I'm not talking a regular season game, put a preseason game, a Denver Broncos preseason game, for example, at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Put a San Francisco 49ers preseason game at Rice-Eccles Stadium. You make an incredible point, and I hadn't thought of it for the draft, but the draft would be even better because the draft is the merging of college football and the NFL. Put it in a market. Doesn't have to be every year. You put it in a non-NFL market, but put it in a market that loves college football every few years. People would absolutely show out for that. And you'd get people traveling who normally travel to other NFL cities to watch their team play on the road. You give them a new place to go to and experience.
It just would be awesome. And if you already have an NFL team, you're spoiled, and you don't deserve to get extra.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what it looks like if you put the first round of the NFL draft in Salt Lake City? It would be incredible. If you put it in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, that would probably be the best place because you're just like, hey, all you insane college football fans, you get to watch the people that you have already loved, you've already become like a big fan of, realize their dreams, and now you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go. I was there when he got drafted. Now I'm going to take my road trip to New Orleans. I'm going to watch him when he plays against the Saints, or when he plays for the Saints, for that matter. Come on, NFL!
Well, just to put a bow on this, when they had the draft in Nashville, one of the first non-New York draft cities, New York, Chicago draft cities, that's an SEC. That's SEC country, and it was one of the most well-attended drafts by fans that they've ever had.
Didn't like 1 million people show up in Nashville? Like,
yeah,
they had like 300,000 people. They thought were like in the plaza.
Yeah,
for the fan experience.
It was something like that, and I think that's no coincidence. That shows that when you put a draft in a college football crazy market, which Nashville, Tennessee certainly is, you get big turnout. You get lots, maybe even more passion than when you put it in Detroit or Green Bay.
Have you been to Nashville?
I have not been to Nashville.
Nashville's great. Nashville, we get to go back to Nashville for a PFL event this year. We had one last year. I went and watched our guy Eric Weddle, who's going to join us on the show tomorrow. I watched him play for the Ravens against the Tennessee Titans. It's a great city. It's just an awesome, awesome town to go visit. I hear it's also great to live in. The humidity would probably get to me a little bit, but Nashville, good stuff. All right. Big thanks to Devin Jackson for joining us. You know what? A legend has retired. We'll tell you who it is next. You probably thought he already retired, but it's official now. Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports show, ESPN 700.
So Florida to the power play for the first time tonight. On the road this season, the number 3 ranked power play. And what an opportunity for Florida here, already leading 3-1. Reinhardt has a man alone in front, and Tkachuk stick handles his way and scores on the 5-hole. He showed backhand. He had so much time. He was able to make a move, and then he sneaks at 5-hole. It's 4-1.
Yeah, that was Matthew Tkachuk. We talked about him yesterday, having not been playing for the Florida Panthers. Well, he's back now that the playoffs are in full swing against the Tampa Bay Lightning. He had 3 points last night and helped Florida pull away for a Game 1 victory. That sound courtesy of Sports USA. John Ahler's on the call. You could hear it on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 792 on FM. We are your home for the NBA playoffs, your home for the draft, your home for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Next broadcast, Game 4 of Winnipeg Jets, St. Louis Blues on Sunday. This was an announcement that came today, James. I don't know if you were following closely to the extended career of Jimmer Fredette, but he's decided to retire from basketball competition. Jimmer.
Yeah, not already retired. I think that came as a surprise to everybody.
Breaking news, Jimmer Fredette was not already retired from basketball competition.
So here's the thing. I do know that I did figure that he was not officially retired yet until this moment, because I do remember seeing him play 3-on-3 Olympic basketball just not even a year ago in Paris. So yeah, maybe it wasn't as surprised as most people, but there's plenty of people going, oh yeah, I thought he already was retired.
I mean, he ended up – here's the thing. It's easy to kind of like get real snide about a career like Jimmer Fredette's career. The dude has not had to have a regular job like the rest of us schlubs just yet. He's 35 years old, and he started it off with the Kings. Then he was with the Bulls, then the Pelicans, then the Westchester Knicks, then the New York Knicks, then the Shanghai Sharks, then the Phoenix Suns, then Panathinaikos, then back to the Shanghai Sharks. I don't even know where Sagesi SC is, but the guy's just, he's found a way to carve out this spot for himself in the NBA at first and then internationally in basketball. And there are worse things to be doing with your time than playing a game for a lot of money. He's made a lot of money.
All over the world, too, by the way. Like playing in China a couple different stints, different places in Europe.
Dude, Shanghai, I haven't been to Shanghai in 10 years. Shanghai is one of the coolest cities I've ever been to in my life. It was like one of the most surprising and amazing trips that I have ever taken. And he got to play for the Shanghai Sharks a couple of times. So congratulations to Jimmer Fredette on a legendary career.
Well, plus he got to play in the Olympics, as I mentioned most recently. Like that's a banner career, even though it didn't work out for him at the highest level of the game in the NBA. That's still like, if I had that same journey, I would not be feeling sorry for myself at all. Like that's a pretty incredible career.
Jimmer Fredette's career high points in the NBA. What do you think it was?
20?
24.
24.
Yeah.
I underestimated him. My bad. 24 points. Was
24
that
points,
was it with the Kings?
Yes, against the New York Knicks in an overtime game.
So against his future team.
Yeah. 24 points, 2 assists, hit 6 threes in that game. And then eventually that was February 12th, 2014, and then on February 27th, the Kings bought out the rest of his contract.
Oh, no.
So despite his career high, they were just like, see you later. Now, look, especially here on a Utah station, you probably expect that I'm just going to be like, Jimmer, never lived up to the hype. There are so many individuals.
What a bust.
So many guys who don't live up to the hype at the professional level. And, the game has changed, and Jimmer was like on the cresting wave of the three-point shot being such a fascinating thing. Was it as sustainable for him as it was for like a Steph Curry? Obviously not. But it was truly remarkable watching Jimmer range when Jimmer was the player of the year at BYU. Like
that season was
insane, dude. Absolutely magical. And there are very few people from any local school who are ever going to achieve, even as a snapshot in their time at the forefront of either collegiate athletics or pro athletics. There are very few people with connections to the state who are ever going to have that level of dominance, of attention, of just fun around their game. So that was really, really cool. Jimmer, congratulations on a professional basketball career that took you all over the world. And when we talk about people being a bust and people being like, Jimmer has millions and millions of dollars, ladies and gentlemen. So you don't get to laugh too hard, even if you're talking about just the professional, like, provide for your family level of success. He's done very well for himself. And he is always going to be a legend in the state of Utah. I wonder if Jimmer will spend a lot of time here post-retirement when he's not chasing 3-on-3 and professional opportunities. I wonder if Jimmer will settle down some roots, have at least a home here. And, you know, how many of those Silicon Slopes companies have strong BYU ties in the C-suite that would just love to have Jimmer come through and do some speaking engagements or whatever?
Absolutely. He, I believe, is currently living in Denver. So he's decided
choice.
He's decided to settle at least in close to.
Take back whatever I said.
Where we are.
Take back whatever I said about Jimmer and all the positive things. Denver is the bad version of Salt Lake City. Okay, it's
why live there when you have this here, Jimmer?
When people who've never been to the Mountain West region of the United States think of Denver, the picture in their mind is actually a picture of Salt Lake City. Do you know that? People are like,
yeah. Dumb and Dumber is partially to blame for that.
Yeah, blame it on Dumb and Dumber. But people are just like, oh, yeah, like Denver, like so close to the mountains. Wrong. Denver's not close to the mountains. Denver is a couple hours away from real mountains. Okay? So don't do it, people. Don't give Denver credit. Plus, we have to have, like, a natural regional rivalry with them in college football. Okay? The Rocky Mountain rivalry against the University of Colorado.
The Rumble in the Rockies.
The Utah Hockey Club, a.k.a. Future Mammoth, a.k.a. the what should we call that? The Cold War against
the Cold War.
See what I did there? Against the Avs. Especially if they settle on Utah
Frozen
Hockey Club.
Tussle.
If we settle on Utah Hockey Club as the permanent franchise name and the Yeti becomes the mascot, do you know the other NHL franchise that at one time had a Yeti as its mascot?
The Avalanche.
It was the Colorado Avalanche.
They still have the Yeti foot, right? That's one of their alternate logos.
It might be an alternate logo, but it's like their throwback. They don't use it anymore.
Yeah, okay.
So, again, rivalry. When we get the Utah Cutthroats or whatever, you know who we're going to hate? The Rockies.
Oh, yeah.
Screw you, Rockies.
Wasatch Mountains is a better range than the Rocky Mountains anyway.
Yeah, and far more iconic and legendary.
Yeah, people outside of this region absolutely know what Wasatch is.
100%.
Unlike Rockies.
Yes, 100%, James. Yep, you're right. Dang it. Anyway, congrats to Jimmer. He's retired. Surprise announcement. Making the announcement simultaneously that he was not retired and that now he is retired. That's kind of, you're killing two birds with one stone there.
There's so many basketball players in particular, OC, because of all how there's more opportunities to play abroad in basketball than there are in almost any other sport. So many basketball players, like Rajon Rondo, I don't think he ever played overseas, but he retired like 2 years after he last played an NBA game. Dwight Howard retired like 4 or 5 years after he last played an NBA game because he was playing in Middle East and Europe, various places. Like, there's so many of those. Like, wait a minute, haven't you already been retired for like a decade, man? Like, why are you telling us now?
Because when it's you and it's your personal experience, it's your life. You're not retired as long as you're still doing your thing.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I occasionally go and I throw a football in the backyard to my daughters.
You haven't officially retired.
I have not officially retired. I'm still draft eligible, in fact.
Did you?
Will my name be called tomorrow in the first round of the NFL draft for the first time at age 41? Probably not, but it's
will-
not 100% guaranteed no, James.
Will it happen while you're on the air, apparently in Green Bay tomorrow?
That would be amazing. Can you imagine?
The Minnesota Vikings select Sean O'Connell. Wait, is this a prank? Is this Kevin O'Connell playing a prank on his brother or something?
I'm sure there's a Sean O'Connell in college football. It could happen.
Oh, man.
It won't. All right, we'll give away some golf today as part of our Festival of Tees, brought to you by the Utah Golf Association. I got a trivia question for you, of course.
I've got real quick before you send it to a break. Did you officially retire from MMA?
I did.
Okay, so it's too late. Can't.
I did. I put an official statement out that I was retiring, but I did say if someone gives me enough money, I'll come back. And everyone's just like, no, we're not interested in that. Nope.
You had to shoot your shot, though.
Yeah, wasn't that we weren't that interested in seeing you fight in the first place. So move along. Utah's #1 sports talk. One more segment on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. right, we got to give away 18 holes to Glendale, part of our Festival of Tees. Utah Golf Association powers these giveaways every day, 3 times a day on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. 877-353-0700 is where you submit your answer to today's trivia question. We were talking about Jackson Dart, who may or may not hear his name called in the latter part of the first round tomorrow night. You know where he finished his high school career? Where did he start his high school career in the state of Utah? 877-353-0700. What school did Jackson Dart play for before he transferred to Corner Canyon?
Sneaky question by you there.
Why
I
is
was
that
going to say sneaky good, but where did he finish? Everyone knows Corner Canyon, but how many people know where he started?
Exactly.
I don't know. That's a very good, clever question by you, OC.
I mean, we gave the answer earlier on the show, so get the answer right.
You even shouted out, was that a coach up there?
Yeah, who at one point was my position coach at Weber State.
Oh.
So, and then he went back to the high school ranks. 18 holes to Glendale, if you know where Jackson Dart spent actually the bulk of his high school career before he ended up at Corner Canyon in the old Draper.
Where he first started throwing darts?
No. Oh, look, we have a correct answer. Many of them, actually.
Oh, good for we have a very. I've always said it. We have a very knowledgeable listener base here on the Sean O'Connell Show.
Roy is the correct answer for anyone out there who didn't know. He was a Royal. 0626 on the text line. I went to Denver a couple years ago to watch the Cardinals play the Rockies. Thoroughly unimpressed by Denver. Downtown Denver was filthy, run down, and the stadium is in the slums. I'm telling you, man, Denver compared to Salt Lake sucks. It just does. Now, the suburbs, the surroundings, Boulder, I like. Denver itself, I had an opportunity to take a job there. I'm really glad we didn't do it. So I would have been working for the Cronkies, and we've seen what that organization does. They fire you even when you're good at your job. See what I did? I brought it back to sports. You're welcome, everybody. Crosstalk on the Sean O'Connell Show, as you get ready for the drive, is brought to you by Burt Brothers. Burt Brothers. There's Spence Checketts, host of the drive.
Did you interview with Altitude?
I went out and I did a 2-day audition, and they offered me the job.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Right before I took this job.
I did it right before no, not right before I took this job. It was several years ago. It was
before Bay Area, Sean?
It was after Bay Area.
Okay.
And it was right before I won my my PFL championship. So it would have been
Very
that
nice.
year. But
Denver's all right.
No. Denver is a rough approximation of Salt Lake City in terms of its greatness.
Huh. No baklava shakes there? What's the deal? Actually,
they have decent food.
I quite like Denver.
Denver's fine. It's just fine.
Yeah. But what would people say?
The airport situation sucks.
The airport situation, and we're so lucky here.
And maybe like satanically influenced if you read the right blogs.
Wow.
Yeah.
You listen to Rogan this morning, or what's going on with you? Jeez. What would people say about Salt Lake? You don't live here. Salt Lake's fine, right?
No.
They wouldn't even say that.
They would say Salt Lake is the greatest city in America.
They would not. They would say Salt Lake is weird. My friends to this day still are like, why do you live out there? I'm like, well, it's awesome. You don't have to know.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why I went anti-Denver there for a second, but I just, I'm leaning into it. Because we hate the Rockies, because we're going to get a baseball team.
Mm-hmm.
We hate the University of Colorado because of the Rocky Mountain rivalry.
Okay. Ooh, yeah, that. Don't even say that. It gets my blood boiling. Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. We hate the Nuggets because the Jazz Nuggets rivalry goes back decades.
Larry Miller tried to fight a Nuggets fan. It's a real thing.
All right.
Yeah.
And Utah Hockey Club versus Avs. No thanks.
Yeah.
Dude.
Okay, I'm on board. You convinced me.
Thank you.
There we go.
Spence.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
with you.
How are you?
I'm good. Duke had his 4-year vet appointment today.
Okay.
So 3 vaccinations. He's going to be sleeping in the studio today.
Duke, what are you weighing right now, pal?
Duke weighed in at 72 pounds, which is a 6-pound weight gain, and that's what we were looking for.
Good. All
so
right.
he's healthy. It's funny, man, because I only have one child, and he is grown. So now I'm like driving to the vet with my dog, like nervous. Like I hope he's okay. It's a wild, wild thing. I need more things to take up my time and energy and attention because I'm like nervous parenting my 4-year-old puppy.
Okay, well, that's for Duke to deal with and not the rest of us.
How's your pup?
Great.
Do we have a name?
Yeah, his name's Rocky.
Rocky. Very nice.
Yeah, Rocky. And Rocky, at his first vet appointment here in Utah, we've only had him for, 2.5 weeks now. He weighed in at 30 pounds. So
Okay.
at 10 weeks old.
Your wife sent out a Instagram video of one of your daughters on like a vibrating scale.
Yes.
Oh my! It had me crying laughing.
It's the funniest thing.
I watched it like 20 times.
Yeah, sorry, baby, I got to do this.
No, do it.
My wife, is like in this mode right now where she's like, "Okay, we're getting back in shape, we're getting fit," and I'm like, "Yep, let's do it, let's go." We've bet each other in a fitness challenge.
Ooh.
Where I have to get to my target weight, she has to get to her target weight. I have to lose a little bit more than twice as much as her because I'm twice as big as she is.
Mm-hmm.
And the winner, whoever gets there first, and we're doing this for health and whatever, not for aesthetics, of course.
You guys are married. Aesthetics don't matter.
We don't have to
anymore.
impress each other
Yeah,
anymore.
exactly.
But the winner gets to go out of town for the weekend, gets to do whatever they want for the weekend.
Without the group.
Without the group.
Oh, what a brilliant bet for
So
a
it's
married
like,
couple.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, like she really wants it.
For sure.
More than I do. Because I get to go and do PFL stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway. And so she's like, okay, we're getting back in shape. And I'm like, awesome. We have a gym in our basement,
Mhm.
okay? We got we got a punching bag in there. We got wrestling mats. We have kettlebells, dumbbells. We have an exercise bike. You have everything you need. And my wife gets on Amazon and starts buying like the things that old people use to like get in shape,
Like a shake weight?
like the infomercial stuff. They, those like little. There's like the stair stepper machine, but it's this big, and it's
Yes.
just two little things you can put.
Yeah.
It's just a pneumatic. Like
Mm-hmm.
she got one of those.
Okay.
I was like, please return that right now. That is what like 90-year-old people use to get in shape at the nursing home.
Mm.
She's like, I like it. And then she bought that vibration plate thing that you're supposed to just stand on it, and it like engages your core
Okay.
or whatever.
Never heard of one of
She's
those.
like, I got it on Temu. It was like nothing. And yeah, that's where she put the baby on it because it shakes the hell out of you. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
And she put our chubby little baby on it with only a didiaper on, and just the rolls were just going.
I sent that to people. I'm
It's
like,
the
dude, this is my guy Sean's daughter. Like, because I don't know that she fully knew what was about to happen, but she was enjoying it. Like, she was laughing. It was funny.
And then you take her off, and she gets mad. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you saw the dog in that.
I did see the pup.
Yeah.
Yeah, good looking pup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy
Rocky's
for you guys.
He's a good little dude. He's he and I walk my daughter to school every day, and he gets to socialize with the children.
Very nice.
He's going to be giant, so I want him to be a friendly giant.
Dogs are life enhancers. So
They
I'm
are.
happy for you and your fam. It's great.
Thanks. Yeah,
Mhm.
that was the reason we decided to add a puppy to the mix of 3 children under 5, or 5 and under, I should say.
Yeah. How did she feel about that proposition where you're still traveling and working and she's in charge of making sure that the dog doesn't take a dump all over the place?
Well, it was a conversation. we'll
I'm
say
sure it
that.
was. I'm sure it was. Good for you guys.
Anyway, you want to stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. He will be talking about all things relevant to the Utah sports market. And maybe, just maybe, his lovely dog Duke will, I don't know, bark.
No, I think he's going to sleep. The vet's like, he's going to be tired all day. So he's chilling.
Right. Well, Duke's awesome. James, well done today. Thanks to everyone who joined us on the show. You're listening to Utah's #1 sports talk. Stay tuned for The Drive. Sean O'Connell show is over on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.